Ulit.
The June 23 to 29, 2025 Kantar Media Survey results are out. And AKSYON Radio Iloilo is again officially the overall number one among all Iloilo radio stations. Kag ang Love Radio 97.5 nga sister station sa AKSYON Radio Iloilo. Amo naman ang nagpanguna sa mga FM stations sa Iloilo. Quintuple winner! 5 ka mga sunod-sunod nga mga kadalagan tungod sa inyong pagsakda kag pagsuporta.
Kadakukit nga salamat for making us number one again!
In the name of public service and airwave supremacy sa Iloilo, AKSYON Radio!
The following program is rated SPG. Strong parental guidance is needed. Hugot nga pagubay kag pagabay sa mga ginikanan ang kinahanglan sa mga kabataan nga nagapamati.
AKSYON Reports Afternoon Edition. Naglalagablab, umuusok at nagbabagang mga maaksyon at pangunahing balita. AKSYON Reports Afternoon Edition. Lahat ng mga top stories of the day at mga live interviews mula sa mga newsmakers na nakalap na mga masisipag at magigiting na mga mobile at beat reporters at mga kagawad ng bulwagang pambalitaan na inyong mapapakinggan sa AKSYON Reports Afternoon Edition. Dito lamang sa inyong nangungunang himpilan ng radyo, AKSYON Radio Iloilo. Subok na ang kakayahan, matibay ang paninindigan, AKSYON Radio.
Mayong hapon Pilipinas, mayong hapon Western Visayas. Liwat naman nga nagapalayag sa kahanginan ang palatuntunan AKSYON Reports Afternoon Edition. Upod sa gihapon sa inyo ka-aksyon, unit number 33, AKSYON George Ticaw Cabrera. Pagkita pag-aubdan, ni AKSYON Bem Abintino. Kag sa transmitter, AKSYON Journey Vulcan. O sa karon nga edisyon ika-4 na nga Lunes, kag katapusan na nigali nga Lunes, no, sa ikaduha nga bulan, ang bulan sang Pebrero, kag ari na kita sa pizza 23. Kami ara sa nga 28 dias ang kabilugan, no, nga inadlaw nga ara ya sa bulan sang Pebrero sa tuig 2026. Kamusta ang mga taga-Arevalo, taga-Molo, taga-City Proper, mga taga-Lapus kag Lapas District, kag subong man o sa mga taga-Mandurriao kag Haro, kag sa mga kabanwanan sa bilog nga probinsya. Ululupon kita banwa tubtob las 6 ang takna subong nga gabi kag sa aton nga mga ka-aksyon. O kamusta kamo tanan-tanan, medyo magalumon ang paniempo o diri sa syudad sa Iloilo. O so hindi na naton padugayon pa, no, standby sa aton nga mga tagpalamati kay may ginaangan-angan kita diri, no, sa report kag impormasyon o sa paghimuon, no, sa hindi lamang madugay mga ka-aksyon nga confirmation of charges hearing o dito iya sa ICC o kon International Criminal Court o sa The Hague, Netherlands. O so standby o kag ini mangin ukon mabatian o sa hindi ilamang madugay o diri sa AKSYON Radio Iloilo. O samtang, no, nagahulat-hulat kita, i-check naton ang sitwasyon o sa kabilugan nga syudad sa Iloilo. O naka-standby na karon si AKSYON para AKSYON para. Okay, no, AKSYON para. Kamusta ang syudad sa report? Please proceed.
Gulo-galumon, AKSYON George. Subo nga hapon. Kung kaina, mga udto, singkal ang init. Pero subo nga hapon, magulo-galumon, nga daw basi, bala karon magtupa, panalitihi sa syudad, sa makitaan man naton ang panganod. Nag-gray AKSYON George, bigla ng Facebook Live.
Nag-gray siya. Tibot silingon nga may mga lugar, no, sa diini nga porsyon, no, southern or northern na Iloilo, AKSYON Farah?
Sa southern, may ara nga porsyon. Pero kayo na, may pagdabo-dabo, porsyon lang gid sa lapas. Pero wala gid nagdugay AKSYON George. Nagsigi-sige nga, amuning tiyempo, wala man na pag-init pagkahapon, pero magulugal-umon. Medyo mabulubog daw na, mayo kani, kay daw na balusan, balasang kabugnaw, ang kainit kaina nga to kasakit gid bala sa ulo kung maglagaw kang wala ka sang pandong. Tubo nga hapon medyo mabudubog na tubtob na ni karon sa gabi as na magkagahon.
Okay, kag makusog ang dapyada sa hangin, no? Kag may tugnaw o kung kabugnaw nga dala, patrol, aksyon Farah?
Yes, insakto in action, George.
Okay, so sa subong nga panahon kay ti rush hour na mo, no? Kadamo na ni sa mga nagapauli nga estudyante. Kamusta ang mga dalanon? Ano, may ara kamo nga nasiplatan nga mga lugar or area nga may pagpugok sa lakat sang trapiko, patrol, aksyon Farah?
Sa General Luna, medyo madamo naman ang mga salakyan. Light to moderate sitwasyon sa traffic flow. Sa General Luna, experience. Pero palabot di sa Molo, wala, nagadamo mga salakyan, nagapauli sa ilang mga lugar, especially na nagagwa bala sa syudad. Mga nagapauli sa ilang kabanwahanan after na sa ilang trabaho diri sa Iloilo City. Makita naman natin sa mga dalanon kadamo naman sa mga estudyante nga nagapauli alin sa ilang eskulahan kiti amo ni nga oras mga 5:34 subong mga na 5 buhi na nila mga mata-mata ni sila pauli ang iba nagalakat-lakat na kung lapit ng ila balay kung may ara kayang malayo nga balay layo imo balay kaya magsakay sa jeep kung may ara kang sugat ti ulaton mula sa kilid sa kalsada pero muna so far sa Molo in reaction, George, makita na kalabanan mga estudyante. Makita natin sa dalan, especially ng mga taga City High, bala. Labanan ni sa ila, alin sa City High, lakto na nila pakadto sa Molo Plaza. Doon sila masakay. Kaya yung iban sa ila, tilakat-lakat, pauli sa ila nga mga tagsa kabalay, naman sa area sa Molo.
Oo, kay kung subong ba pati bala aksyon na Farah sa balayran mo sa sikad or e-bike mo, kamahal naman gali, no? Aksyon Farah?
Oo, ang iban nga mga tricycle, bisan ikaw lang isa, 15 imo ginabayaran.
Gani man, ti amo ning iban nga mas mahal pagali din kung maggasakay ka sa salakyan, magkurto-kurto lang bala aksyon Farah, kay ti 13 lang gani mo ang kurto iya sa mga di gasolina nga mga salakyan, aksyon Farah?
Ang iban naman niya, action George, nagambal man na gani. Actually, sakto na kung nagambaling iba na kung tingbon ko ng ilapliti kadadlaw, especially na mga nag-taxi, kaya mga nag-grab, tingbon na ni balay lang pamasahe, nakabakala sila sa lakyan.
Amo man gani, no? Tiban gani, purus na, kung why ka nag-sakyan, ti mapilitan ka na lang maggasakay tricycle, di gani, taxi, grab, kag kung ano pa, at least bala makapuli, kakay ti kunara, kayas balay mo, makapahuway, kagid bala sang insakto, aksyon Farah?
Oo. Ang iba na action George, nagana sila ang angkas na bala. Mga rider, mapost na sila sa isa ka Facebook page, tapos mabakada, looking for rider. Tapos mag-comment na ang mga sa Facebook, mga rider gid bala. Tapos chat ka mo da, iin ka mapapick up, hindi ka mapadulog. Kag may ara man na sila yung rate sa mga riders. Siyempre dapat lang tawon mo man nga safe kaya. Safe nga magpauli, especially na kung gabi, kag kung kay sa tikin kung kilala mo bala, San George, ilan taon mo, na plate number, text mo sa imo nga mga kakilala, kung gani imo yung pamilya, para mapahibalo man sila nga amo lang imo gisakyan, pauli sa inyo balay, o paukadto sila trabaho.
Kay ti subong, hindi man siling may pagduda kita, kundi aksyon para paniguro man no? Kay ti kung kaysa, bago lang ka mo nakakilahay sang ginasakyan mo, ti budlay nila, binigong babayi ka?
Amo na nga bal nila kuno unexpected balang mga nagkakalataw pero dapat kiman magpangaman action George. Bisan toon may mga pulis sa palibot pero may mga areas gidi mutangta mga bagulang naghalin ang pulis. Gani mga lugar nga kakamis nga libutan sang pulis. Tikon may mga malain kaya nga tuyo sa isa ka tawo ti balaan mo kitang lugar nga ina. Amo na nga magpangaman lang layo taman tuod pero dapat nga maghalong gid siya isang wala pa ni natabo.
Okay, so magluwas ni aksyon Farah, no? Kamusta naman niya ang may mga pasayro nga nakita kamo nga stranded o kunway sa may masakyan abi aksyon Farah?
Di man gid nga stranded action George. Nagahulat lang man.
Nagahulat lang.
Okay, siyempre damo mga pasahero subong. Ang iban nga mga jeep nagakapuno. Kung nagakapuno, ulat ka naman sang isa pa ka jeep ka magalabay sa lugar para makasakay magpapay ka man niya, kag hindi na ginutok ka lang, hindi ka na sakay sa ibabaw sa katop, di sa mga, sa iya mga floor, gwa, di isang jeep.
Nan.
Pulaton mo lang ya, tamo ginasang labay nga jeep, panti nga mga jeep. Kung hindi kung pwede, man lang walking, kaya nga man walking subong. Exercise pa na, Action George, kung wala ka malang dala.
Yes, isa sa mga kuan ang iban subong gaano na lang lakat-lakat action para makasave ka pa.
Oo. Sa safe ka man lang, kung wala ka malang ginabit-bit ka mabuga, at kung mag-walking, wala ka wala nakahiyo. Di pwede na exercise man, Action George, kaya subong di man mainit. Nandiyan mo na ka namin, iba sa tiyempo, nga maglagaw, kung maglakat-lakat ka sa syudad, kung pahuli ka man, kung hindi kaya nakapoy, pwede gid ka lakat.
Okay, so magluwas ini marutawhay naman, no? May pagpugok ibang gali sa lakat sa trapiko, di kita magsala. Ang video subong nga nakita naton, ara kamo subong sa Mulo Plaza, gid Action para.
Yes.
Okay, siga. Thank you, gid Action para may Murano. Balikan ka na namon sa dugang nga mga police report. Salamat gid patrol.
Para may Murano sa Iloilo, AKSYON Radio.
Subok na ang kakayahan. Matibay ang paninindigan. Aksyon Radyo.
So bantayan karon mga kasyon ang mga natipon, no, nga mga balita kag information upod iya sa patrol with aksyon para may Murano, no, kag standby man, no, sa mga dugang nga mga police report with aksyon Maria Kayla Tingson kay ang suspect bala sa pagpatay sa security guard sa barangay De Venegracia, La Paz, nagapabilin nga at large, kag kun ano ang motibo. Sus Mario Josep, dari naman nagwa naman ho nga kuan naman inang pagpangimon ang ginatan-aw diri nga rason kun nga ang namuno ang isa iya ka construction worker o sa isa iya ka gwardiya. Iyang panawagan sang pulis, ang panawagan iya sang live-in partner sa suspect nga mag-surrender. Sa kadamo-damo na ni nagsikalawagtang action bem mo sa mga kuan nga ni inang pulo pangimon bla. Kunti iba niya way anay ni usisaa sang maayo. Ang is ka magpangimon. Tiya mo ning isa sa mga rason kung kaisa nga ay pobre man ni ang gwardiya nga ni kay tiway siya balo nga gapangimon galing live-in partner iya ho. Ti ko lang for example, iba niya ragin man medyo lambing blackson bem. Sa mga kababainhan, pero iba niya lain ang ilang pananawan kag panghuna-una. Ti dayon lang iya pamuno, bauti kita mo lang ginuba mo yang puturo mo ya tilang tawabla patay ni ho. Ang security guard matapos nga nabunan kagabi dira sa De Venegracia sa distrito sang Labas. So standby kay kwaon naton karon ang kabugusan nga report kag information upod ya kay aksyon na Kayla Tingson. Diri gihapon sa aton nga pagpangalagad sa action report sa afternoon edition. Para sa inyo nga mga reaksyon, opinion, lakip na karon sa inyo nga mga panamyaw o hingagaw, number naton diri text line sa Aksyon Radio Iloilo ang 0918-457 kag 3. So inuras na gid lamang ang aton ginahulat, no, kag gina-check man ni from time to time sa nga aton partner, no, kung nagaumpisa na mga kasyon dito iya sa ICC o kung International Criminal Court. Kay tido anom diri mga kasyon, no, ka mga Filipino lawyers ang magapadulong agod magtambong sa confirmation of charges hearing o bato kay anay presidente Rodrigo Duterte kay do gabi nito kuno sa dahig Netherlands kag ara na do apat ini aksyon bayan, no, kita pag-updan with aksyon Brian Valle, no, kay do apat ini ka mga hukom, no, puro babayi nga mag-supervise sa confirmation of charges hearing kag sila ini ang magadesisyon kung bala dayunon ang kaso or hindi mga kason kontra ya kay President Rodrigo Duterte. Check nato Action Brian, mayong hapon.
Mayong hapon, Action George. Yes, so good na. So makita naton sining ang mga judges sa kaso no, ni former President Rodrigo Duterte nagsulod na. And pwede naton sila mapamatian, no, Action Bem?
I-like na lang.
This is 30 minutes late, Action George.
Yes.
30 minutos is ini late, no? So meaning to say, nakasugod na ni dito sa dahig Netherlands, no? 30 minutes ago. So pamatian naton, Action Bem?
Participants to introduce themselves. starting by Mr. Deputy Prosecutor. Could I please ask you to introduce yourself and to confirm to me whether the list of your team members that I received before the hearing is correct? Thank you, Madam President. Your Honours. The Office of the Prosecutor is represented today by myself. I'm Nyai, Deputy Prosecutor. By my side, I have James Mirity, Case Manager. I have Mr. Julian Nichols, Senior Trial Lawyer. And behind us, we have Mr. Edward Jeremy, Trial Lawyer, Madam Robin Croft, Trial Lawyer, Madam Maria Berdenikova, Trial Lawyer, and lastly, Hannah Allen, Associate Trial Lawyer. These are the individuals comprising our team today, and I thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Prosecutor. Now, before moving on to the defence, I note that Mr. Duterte is not present in the courtroom today. Indeed, on the 20th of February 2026, the Chamber granted Mr. Duterte's request to waive his rights to be present at the confirmation of charges hearing. Pursuant to Article 61(2)(a) of the Rome Statute and Rule 124 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence. In this decision, number 387, the Chamber concluded that the conditions contained in the provisions were fulfilled, namely that Mr. Duterte has the right and knows he has the right to be present at the confirmation of charges hearing and knows the consequences of waiving this right. However, Mr. Duterte's counsel is present today to represent him. Counsel, could you please introduce yourself and confirm to me that the list of your team members that I received before the hearing is indeed correct?
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Your Honours. Indeed, the list before you is correct. May I introduce my team? To my left, I have Dr. Dov Jacobs. To my right, I have Ms. Havnit Sethi. Sitting next to her is Maître Alexandre Dezev-Davy.
French.
Behind him, Attorney David Rancati. Sitting next to him, Maître Sandrine de Sena. And our two further lawyers, we have Nicolas Rousseau and also Kaylin Chen. And if Your Honour will permit me, there are also Filipino attorneys who are attending and supporting us today, and I'll briefly mention their names. Maître Salvador Mediadea, who Your Honours are familiar with from the initial appearance, Attorney Martin Delgras, Attorney Silvestre Bello, Attorney Alfredo Lim, Attorney César Doulay, and of course, Attorney Salvador Panello. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Maître. J'ai envie de...
Thank you very much, Counsel. I would like to now call upon the legal representatives of victims to present them, to introduce themselves and confirm to me that the list of your team members I received before is correct.
Victims participating in this proceeding are represented today by Mr. Joel Butuyan, Mr. Gilbert Andres, myself, Paulina Masida, and I confirm the list of our jurists who assist us today as provided to the court officer. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Maître Mas.
Thank you very much, Maître Masida. Thank you. On my right, I have Judge Rain Adelaide, and I have Judge Adelaide Sophie Alapina Gansu, and to my right I have Maria del Socorro Flores Liera. And I am Julia Antonuela Motok, and I am the presiding judge in Pretrial Chamber 1 of the court. This hearing concerns the confirmation of charges by the prosecution against Mr. Duterte. At this stage of pretrial proceedings, The OTP alleges that Mr. Duterte is responsible for the crimes that the course officers shall read out shortly. The Chamber shall not take any decision with regard to the guilt or innocence of Mr. Duterte during this hearing. Indeed, the role of the Chamber is to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to establish substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Duterte committed the crimes with which he is charged. If all or part of the charges are confirmed, the Chamber will refer the case to trial, where the trial chamber will decide upon the innocence or guilt of Mr. Duterte. The general principles to be applied at the hearing are as follows. The suspect, in accordance with Article 66 of the Rome Statute, the suspect is considered to be innocent until his guilt has been proven by the court. The burden of proof is upon the OTP, which must produce sufficient evidence to prove the charges against Mr. Duterte at the required standard of proof, at Article 61, paragraph 7 of the Rome Statute. Finally, the defense enjoys, or the suspect enjoys, all the rights listed at Article 61, paragraphs 6 and 67 of the Rome Statute. The hearing shall take place according to the schedule contained in the order dated the 26th of January 2026, document number 359. The parties and participants must respect the allocated speaking times indicated in this order. I would like to remind the parties and participants that oral remarks must be concise and that repetition of previously presented arguments should be avoided. In addition, in order to facilitate the work of the interpreters and ensure the proper transcription of discussions, please make sure that your microphone is on every time you address the court. And please speak slowly and mark pauses between each sentence. Generally speaking, the hearing will be held in open session, and parties and participants will refrain from mentioning the names of victims and witnesses. They will only refer to them by their pseudonym or their code. In order to avoid the disclosure of any confidential information, notably with regard to witnesses and victims, the parties and participants will clearly indicate whether their submissions can be presented in public or whether they deem it necessary to move into private session, notably when referring to items of evidence. The parties and participants will clearly indicate when it is no longer necessary to remain in private session. With these rules in place, we can now move to the reading of the charges in its shortened form, indicating the charges against Mr. Duterte. The full version is available publicly on the internet site of the court. The defense has not raised any objections in this regard. I would like to remind the public that the charges that shall be read out in a few seconds comprise allegations raised by the Office of the Prosecutor that the Chamber shall decide, that shall analyze in order to decide whether the evidence presented by the Office of the Prosecutor is sufficient in order for these charges to be confirmed. Madam Courtroom Officer, would you please read the charges?
The prosecution charges Mr. Rodrigo Roa Duterte with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of murder and attempted murder as a crimes against humanity committed between 2013 and around June 2016 and between around July 2016 and September 2018 in the Republic of the Philippines as follows. Count 1. Murder of 19 victims alleged to be criminals, including 3 children, who were killed in or around Davao City in the Philippines between 2013 and around 2016 by members of the Davao Death Squad, while Mr. Duterte was the mayor of the Davao City pursuant to Article 71A of the Rome Statute. Count 2. Murder of 14 victims labeled as high-value targets for their alleged criminality, who were killed in locations across the Philippines between around July 2016 and July 2017 by a network of perpetrators comprising state actors and others, referred to as the National Network, while Mr. Duterte was the President of the Philippines pursuant to Article 71A of the Rome Statute. And count 3. Murder and attempted murder of 45 victims, comprising 43 murders and 2 attempted murders of persons alleged to be criminals, including 3 children who were targeted in barangay clearance operations in locations across the Philippines between around July 2016 and September 2018 by members of the National Network, while Mr. Duterte was the President of the Philippines pursuant to Articles 71A and 25(3)(f in respect of the attempted murder of the Rome Statute. The prosecution alleges that Mr. Duterte is individually criminally responsible for all 3 of the above counts as follows. First, as an indirect co-perpetrator pursuant to Article 25(3)(a) of the Rome Statute. At least between 1st November 2011 and 16 March 2019, Mr. Duterte and his co-perpetrators shared a common plan to neutralize alleged criminals in the Philippines, including individuals perceived or alleged to be associated with drug use, sale, or production, through violent crimes including murder. Mr. Duterte and his co-perpetrators implemented this common plan through the hierarchically organized structures of the Davao City Police, Police and Davao Death Squad, and then the National Network. Within the framework of the common plan, Mr. Duterte made essential contributions to the crimes in counts 1 to 3 by A. Designing and disseminating the police to neutralize alleged criminals, both in his role as a mayor of the Davao City and also during his presidential campaign and as a president, including by endorsing the anti-illegal drugs campaign Double Barrel. B. Establishing and overseeing the DDS. C. Instructing and authorizing violent acts, including murder, to be committed against alleged criminals, including alleged drug dealers and users. D. Providing personnel and other necessary logistic resources such as weapons, including those to be used in the execution of the crimes. E. appointing key personnel to positions which were crucial to the execution of the crimes. F, offering financial incentives and promotions to police officers and hitmen to kill alleged criminals. G, creating and maintaining a system in which perpetrators knew they would be protected, including through promises of immunity and shielding perpetrators from investigation and prosecutions. H, making public statements authorizing, condoning, and encouraging killings of alleged criminals, both as a mayor of the Davao City and as a president of the Philippines. I, authorizing state actors to take part in the anti-drugs campaign and temporarily revoking such authorization, including to placate public outcry. J, publicly naming individuals and holding up charts from lists of alleged criminals, including so-called high-value targets, some of whom were subsequently killed. Second, in the alternative, Mr. Duterte is charged with ordering and/or inducing the charged crimes pursuant to Article 25(3)(b) of the Rome Statute, and/or aiding and abetting these crimes pursuant to Article 25(3)(c) of the Rome Statute.
Merci, Madame la greffière.
Thank you, Madam Courtroom Officer. With regard to objections and observations under Rule 122, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, the Chamber notes that the defence submitted a number of written observations, and the last of which was on the 16th of February 2026, to which the OTP and the legal representatives of victims responded, respectively, on the 17th and the 18th of February 2026. On the 20th of February 2026, the Chamber dismissed, in its public decision, the defence's objections, in specifying that the defense and the Office of the Prosecutor are not permitted to reiterate the same arguments already presented in the filings mentioned, that they filed to date in this case. I will now ask if the parties wish to make any oral submissions on this point before moving to the opening statements. Mr. Deputy Prosecutor? Mr. Nyang, we do not have any submissions to make in this regard. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Prosecutor. Counsel?
Madam President, we have no observations.
Merci beaucoup, Maître Kaufmann. Donc, on peut maintenant passer à la phase.
So we can now move on to stage 2, namely the opening statements, and I hand over to the Office of the Prosecutor. Mr. Deputy Prosecutor, please.
Madam President, honorable member of the bench, all those following these proceedings inside the courtroom and outside, and especially those in the Philippines. Today marks an important day for international justice for the people of the Philippines, for the victims, and for this court. The commencement of the confirmation hearing against Mr. Rodrigo Roa Duterte is a reminder of the court's unwavering commitment to its mission to investigate and prosecute individuals for the most serious crimes of concern to the international community and to bring justice to the thousands of victims of the mass crimes and atrocities perpetrated in the Philippines. It is also a reminder that those in power are not above the law. Your Honors, over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, I will provide an overview of the evidence in this case that demonstrates that Mr. Duterte is responsible for the charged crimes. And my team will then develop aspects of this evidence in more details. This case before you today, it is before you today because there are substantial ground to believe that Mr. Duterte is criminally responsible for those three counts of murder just spelled out and attempted murder as crimes against humanity. These charged crimes were committed during the time within the court jurisdiction, which is between the 1st of November 2011 and the 16th of March 2019. At first, they were committed in and around Davao City, where Mr. Duterte was a mayor, and then expanded across the rest of the Philippines when he became president. Mr. Duterte is charged with 49 incidents of murder and attempted murder of 78 victims, including children. These murders and attempted murders were part of a widespread and systematic attack that overall resulted in the killings of thousands of civilians across the country during the relevant time frame. Thus, the charged incidents are merely a fraction of the overall criminality that resulted from Mr. Duterte's so-called war on drugs. What is Mr. Duterte's core contribution? Your Honors, Mr. Duterte played a pivotal role in the commission of the charged crimes. His contribution was essential, as he was at the very heart of the common plan to use his words, to neutralize alleged criminals in the Philippines, including through murders. The victim included individuals associated with or perceived to be associated with drugs. One of the first things Mr. Duterte did when he became the mayor of Davao back in 1988 was to create the infamous Davao Death Squad, otherwise known as DDS. As you will have seen from the prosecution pre-confirmation brief, Mr. Duterte personally instructed Death Squad members that their mission was to kill criminals and suspected criminals, including drug users and dealers, also referred to as drug pushers. The death squads carried out this mission well into the charge period through 2011 to 2016, perpetrating the crimes charged in count 1. Your Honors, Mr. Duterte's criminal plan and his intent were no secret. He not only shared them with his co-perpetrators and members of the death squad, but also made them abundantly clear to the general public in the numerous public statements that he made time and again. During his presidential campaign, Mr. Duterte explicitly vowed to implement the common plan to neutralize alleged criminal nationwide if elected. This was his program to be elected. He publicly announced his intention to eradicate corruption, criminality, and drugs in 3 to 6 months. And this is what he said. I quote, "If I become the president, I will order the military and the police to hunt down the drug lords, the big ones, and kill them." That's what he said. And this can be found at tab 12 of the prosecution list of material. Similarly, when speaking about druggies, I quote, in a televised interview in 2015, this is again what he said. "If I become president, you will all get wiped out. I will order your execution within 24 hours. That's what he said. That I quote directly from his word. And this quote can be found at tab 19.2 of the prosecution list of materials, ERN PHL OTP 401684, page 003, and these are the lines 82 to 83. And elected he was. And becoming president on 13th of June 2016, this provided him with the opportunity to follow through with his promise and to expand extrajudicial killings of alleged criminals beyond Davao and across the rest of the Philippines. He did this through the implementation of the National Anti-Illegal Drug Campaign, better known as Duterte's War on Drug, and its project, Double Barrel. These were carried out by the national network consisting of law enforcement personnel working together with non-police assets and hitmen. Mr. Duterte authorized murder and personally selected some of the targets. During the mayoral period, when he was mayor, his clearance was required for the DDS to carry out the killings. Essentially, members of the DDS needed Mr. Duterte's green light to murder. And during the presidential period, Mr. Duterte has continued to personally identify some of the targets, including by publicly naming those he claimed were involved in illegal drug trade or in other forms of criminality. He also identified targets by holding up a list containing their name. And if you are on the list, you will be killed. And this was a word of one prosecution witness. And this evidence can be found at tab 54 of the prosecution list of materials, ERN PHL OTP 00015 486, page 0009, and the relevant lines are 260 to 261. Mr. Duterte provided moral and financial support to the direct perpetrators as well. In a 12 December 2016 speech, Mr. Duterte admitted that he used to ride around Davao on a motorcycle looking for trouble, so he could kill. And he said, and this again his own word I'm quoting here, in Davao, I used to do it personally, just to show the guy that if I can do it, why can't you? And these are his own words. And this quote can be found at tab 16.1 of the prosecution list of material, ERN PHL-OTP-000015547 at 0002 lines 7 and 8. And the evidence show that Mr. Duterte's Davao City Mayor office provided some member of the DDS with a regular salary. Financial rewards were also given to direct perpetrators in the form of cash per head of killing. And at a press conference in 2013, Mr. Duterte stated that shoot to kill orders and reward are, and I quote him, are legitimate tools of government to fight lawlessness. This is his own word. And if he surrendered to me or his carcass dead, then I double the price. And again, yeah, and that was what he boasted. This quote can be found at tab 17.2 of the prosecution list of materials, PHL-OTP-000094932 at 0002, and the relevant lines are lines 7 to 11. Deaths of drug personalities killed in anti-drug operation were endorsed by Mr. Duterte's administration and listed as official accomplishment in public reporting. Your Honors, as you will have a confirmation brief, Mr. Duterte also provided the direct perpetrators with weapons, ammunition, and logistical support to facilitate the commission of the charged crime. And he also had control, wide control over those crimes. And let me now turn specifically to that control. As mayor of Davao and later as president of the Philippines, Mr. Duterte wielded ultimate influence and authority over the physical perpetrators of the crimes. As mayor, Mr. Duterte was chief executive of the Davao city government, with responsibility for exercising general supervision and control over all its activities. He had formal operational supervision and control over National Police Unit in Davao. As creator and head of the DDS, he also had de facto control over the death squad's members. When Mr. Duterte became president on the 30th of June 2016, he sat at the very apex of the political power structure in the Philippines. He became the head of state, head of government, and commander-in-chief of all armed forces of the Philippines. He also became the leader of the country's police forces. This level of authority allowed him to wield de jure and de facto control over those implementing the common plan nationwide. Mr. Duterte's control over the crime is also apparent from his ability to interrupt their commission when he so chooses. And as outlined in our reconfirmation brief, he successfully suspended police anti-illegal drug operation on 2 occasions following public outcries in response to particularly notorious killings. On both occasions, the number of reported killings dropped significantly during the suspension, showcasing his control. So when he asks people to act, they act. When he asks them to refrain, they do so. So they oblige. So Mr. Duterte was well aware of the authority he had over the perpetrators. In a speech given to the National Bureau of Investigation in November 2016, he expressly acknowledged his position of power. And this is what he said. To the military, I am commander-in-chief. On the civilian side, I am the chief executive of the government. And when talking about the police, this is what he's saying. They are my subordinate, and I am ultimately responsible for their deeds. And these are quotations, and they can be found at tab 131.2 of our prosecution list of materials at ERN PHL-OTP-00095679, page 0004, and the relevant lines are from 131 to 134. And the direct perpetrators complied with Duterte's order and respected his authority. Mr. Duterte was respected by the physical perpetrators. He was feared, and his order and instruction were obeyed. One insider witness explicitly says that the police killed, and I quote, because of the directive of the president. This is what the witness saying, an insider. And this quote can be found at tab 120 of the prosecution list of material, ARN PHL OTP -000886331-R01 and page 66, and the relevant line are from 2304 to 2306. And this statement is corroborated by other statements we have also provided. And some direct perpetrator complied because of their blind loyalty to Mr. Duterte. Some did it out of fear, and others were encouraged to comply by promises of money and rewards. For some, killings reached the level of a perverse form of competition, with effort to attain killing quotas, which in turn would lead to promotions and rewards. Others felt there was no other choice but to comply, with one insider explaining that it was simply not possible to not obey Mr. Duterte's command. And this is also from an insider witness. And this evidence can be found at tab 51 of the prosecution list of materials, ERN PHL-OTP-0015403 at page 0008 to 0009, and the relevant line here is from 240 to 245. direct perpetrators were further emboldened to commit crime by Mr. Duterte's repeated promises of immunity. In various public statements, Mr. Duterte vowed to protect the police involved in killing. And this is what he said again. For as long as there is a power to pardon in the Constitution, that's my weapon against crime. If you massacre 100 and there are 100 of you, then you will all be pardoned. Restore to full political and civil rights, plus a promotion to good. It's like that, especially the high profile. And this quote can be found at tab 130.2 of the prosecution list of materials at ERN PHL-OTP and 50336 at page 0010. Such statements reassure the physical perpetrators. One insider described that he felt confident to continue killing people because he knew that he wouldn't be arrested for that. And this evidence can be found at tab 38 of the prosecution list of material, ERN PHL-OTP 0001-2779 at page 0005, and relevant lines are from 130 to 131. Your Honors, let me now say a few words about the contextual elements. The 78 murders and attempted murders that Mr. Duterte is charged with in this case were not random. These were not random crimes. Nor was they spontaneous or happened in isolation. Rather, the evidence demonstrates that they were part of a widespread and systematic attack directed against the civilians population of the Philippines. The murders and attempted murders were carried out across the Philippines and over a substantial period of time. Overall, Duterte's so-called war on drugs resulted in the killings of thousands of civilians from the 1st of November 2011 to the 16th of March 2019. And many of these victims were...
Excuse me, counsel, you have 5 minutes left.
Okay. Yes, were children. The victim of extrajudicial killing charge in this case were brutally murdered, some after having been abducted and mistreated. Unlike Mr. Duterte, who is represented by his counsel here today, they were deprived of any form of due process. The loss of every single one of these victims had the most profound impact on their families, their friends, and ultimately their communities. Their suffering was met not merely with Mr. Duterte's indifference, but with his mocking. In a 25 July 2016 speech, he expressly made fun of the iconic photograph portraying the partner of an extrajudicial killing victim cradling his body, which now visible on our screen. While the specific incident portrayed in this photograph is not charged in this case, Mr. Duterte's comment on it is demonstrative of his attitude towards the victims. In reference to this photo, Mr. Duterte, this is what he said. Those of you who are still sober, those who haven't tried illegal drugs, if you don't want to die or get hurt, don't rely on the priest, including human rights advocate. They won't be able to prevent death. So, don't do it. And then, there you are, sprawled on the ground, and you are portrayed in a broadsheet like Mother Mary cradling the dead cadaver of Jesus Christ. That's how they are creating dramas here. This is what he said. And this quote can be found at tab 128 of the prosecution list of material at ERN PHL-OTP-50335, page 0008. And of course, the question of whether Mr. Duterte had knowledge and intent, of course, goes without saying. Your Honors, Mr. Duterte intended and knew that the charged crime were occurring, or that they would occur in the ordinary course of event that he had set in place and put in motion. His intent and knowledge are shown by the multiple statements he made throughout his mayoral and presidential tenure, promising to reduce crimes by killing alleged criminals, promoting the common plan, and urging police and even members of the public to kill alleged criminals. As detailed in the prosecution pre-confirmation brief, and as Your Honor will hear in the course of my team's presentation, Mr. Duterte also made statements directly acknowledging allegations of extrajudicial killings by his subordinates and issued a written order showing he knew about the crimes they committed. Your Honors, the prosecution relies on significant and varied sources of evidence to demonstrate that substantial ground exists to believe that Mr. Duterte is criminally responsible for the crimes. This evidence includes multiple witness statements, including insider witnesses. It includes many speeches of Mr. Duterte himself, as well as the statement of his co-perpetrators. It also includes orders and other documents signed by himself. The prosecution further relies on official government documents, including material from the Philippine National Police. It relies on drug watch lists, on audio and video material, as well as on forensic and financial evidence. Your Honors, during the prosecution's subsequent presentation, my colleague will elaborate on some of these core evidence in more detail. Mr. Nichols will give a presentation on Mr. Duterte's background, followed by an overview of the evidence demonstrating his responsibility for the crime charged in count 1. This will be followed by the presentation of Mr. Jeremy behind me, who will speak about the evidence demonstrating Mr. Duterte's responsibility as President for the crime charged in count 2 entry. And Ms. Croft, on my left, will then elaborate on the contextual element of crime against humanity and the mode of liability through which Mr. Duterte is responsible for the crimes alleged in this case. And to conclude, Madam President, Your Honor, while this court cannot reunite victims with their loved one, it can help reveal the truth about what happened to them and bring a sense of justice to the victim. The charge before you today are serious, and the evidence submitted require their confirmation. And Mr. Duterte must be held to account, and this case should be confirmed for trial. I thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy
Opening
Prosecutor.
statement to sa prosecution.
Now we are slightly in advance on our schedule. I will now hand over to the legal representative of victims for her opening statements until 11, and then after that you shall continue. Please proceed, ma'am.
Nang ilang translator naglalaki ang tingog pero babae ni yung judge.
Madam President, Your Honors, by way of an opening statement, we convey the views and concerns of the 497 victims authorized to participate in these proceedings. At the outset, Your Honors, we communicate the very deep disappointment of the victims at the decision allowing Rodrigo Duterte not to be present in this stage of confirmation of charges. The sight of Mr. Duterte being read and being confronted with the grave and horrible charges against him would have constituted a vital component of justice for the victims. This case symbolically represents the last boat that the victims can board to go on a journey in search of justice for their loved ones who were brutally killed upon the orders of Mr. Duterte. If this chamber prevents the boat from sailing by not confirming the charges, the victims will forever be moored in an island where the nights are filled with the screams and cries of their massacred loved ones. There is absolutely no other recourse for the victims. No less than former Philippine Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla admitted just a few months ago that the door to domestic justice is permanently closed for victims of the Duterte extrajudicial killings. Remulla declared, and we quote, "It is difficult to prove the case here and build up the case because those who need to speak are involved in the crime. There's nothing, not even a police report. You don't have a scene of the crime. You don't have ballistics. You don't have DNA." Remulla further declared, and I quote, "Everything that could be erased was erased so that the cases would not push through. That is why this has reached the ICC." Under the Philippine justice system, Your Honors, no criminal case can reach the courts unless they are initiated and filed by the Department of Justice or the Office of the Ombudsman. From Justice Secretary, Remulla has been appointed as Ombudsman. So the two gatekeepers of justice are successively occupied by a ranking official who has declared that there is absolutely no hope for domestic justice for the victims. If the charges are not confirmed in this case, one of the gravest concerns of the victims is that Mr. Duterte will return to the Philippines as a conquering hero. He will resume preaching his gospel of impunity. In fact, if Mr. Duterte could threaten to slap the judges of this court, which he did while he was president, this chamber should imagine the kind of terror-filled threats and the violent actions that can easily be used against the victims if the suspect walks free from this court. If the charges are not confirmed, it is a very serious concern of the victims that Mr. Duterte will be portrayed in history by his multitude of followers as the leader who vanquished the ICC and who cleansed his country of 30,000 rapists, murderers, and dangerous criminals, which were the scornful words he sweepingly used against all those who were killed in his murderous spree. Your Honors, Mr. Duterte has been in detention here in The Hague for almost a year now, but there has been no peace and rest for the victims. From the time their loved ones were killed and continuously up to this time, they live in constant fear for their lives. The arrest and detention of Mr. Duterte has not stopped impunity in the Philippines. The virus of impunity that he spread all over the country has become a cancer that has metastasized, infecting millions of Filipinos. Mr. Duterte has created clones of himself. He converted millions of peace-loving citizens into bloodthirsty disciples who have become converts to the belief that violence and killings are valid solutions to societal problems. The killings masterminded by Mr. Duterte continue to have consequences for the victims even to this day because of his clones. These mini Dutertes harass, threaten, or commit outright violence against the victims and their families. As shown by the number of victims participating in this proceeding so far, many still fear to come out and tell their stories of how their lives became a living hell as a result of Mr. Duterte's crimes, and because they are constantly terrified of being targeted with violence by Duterte fanatics. Many victims have been hesitant to participate in this ICC case because they live in communities that thrive with Duterte clones. They see the halls of power of their country teeming with Duterte disciples. They see and hear senators, congresspersons, mayors, governors, and powerful public figures who are mini Dutertes. The daughter of Mr. Duterte is the vice president, and she has just recently declared that she is running for president in 2028. One Duterte son is a congressman. Another is the Davao City mayor, and his grandchildren occupy positions of power. The plague of impunity has spread not only among Filipinos in the Philippines, but even among expatriate Filipinos in faraway lands like here in The Hague. When we reported to the victims that we, their external legal representatives, feel like fugitives.
Apologies, counsel, it's 11 o'clock.
What you say?
May time limit
When
ilang
we
speech.
reported to the victims that we, their external legal representatives, feel like fugitives who avoid our own countrymen here in The Hague.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Council. We will now take a half-hour break as provided for in the schedule, and you shall resume your remarks at 11:30. These are the rules that are set in the schedule, which was set in paragraph 18 of the decision.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
There you go, no? Nag-break sila. Kayang sistema, busy na Dre Subong, they will be taking an hour break, no? Every 1 hour, no? Action na ini. So, every 1 hour, after 1 hour ng session, ma-break sila for another hour. Nabatian natin sila ba just a short while ago the opening statements ng prosecution. Ang prosecution banwa amuning nagatindog sini bilang nag-asunto, no? Kontra sila banwa kay anay Presidente Rodrigo Duterte. Ang ikaduha dito nga nabatian natin sila ba abogado naman to sang mga biktima, no? Sa alleged crime against humanity nga kaso sini ba kontra kay former President Duterte. Now, ang banatayan, kag ginulatulat natin sa buong banwa, this is going to be an hour break. No, isa lang ka oras, pagbalik sa banwa, mabatian natin kung ano naman ang opening speech ni isang team ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
So balantayan ini banwa, plus starta ni na short while no diri sa aton sini nga pangalagan. May mga i-unload lang kita diri no nga mga commercials naton para later on sini para maka duro-diretso kita no. Kindly stand by sa aton sini ba nga mga suki sa aton sini nga pagsunod sa confirmation of charges. Las 6:33.
Time check brought to you by
Looking for the perfect bloom to brighten someone's day? Discover Panang's Flower Shop, your local floral haven right here on Isnard Street. Whether it's birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, or just because, our fresh handcrafted bouquets are designed to express every emotion beautifully. From elegant roses to tropical arrangements, we've got flowers that speak louder than words. Need something special? We customize, deliver, and make sure your flowers arrive fresh and stunning every time. Call us today at 0920-825-6483 or 0916-786-8896 to order, or drop by our cozy shop on Isnard Street where blooms meet heart. Panang's Flower Shop.
Sugad sa Iloilo, number 1 sa mga Ilonggo. Kompletong mga baligya, kasarangan gid ang presyo. May bargain araw-araw, ang discount nyo todo-todo. Dalik mag-grocery, Iloilo Supermart magkadto. Mahapos kadtuan, kung gusto nyo mag-grocery. Madamo ang mga branches, malapit sa inyo puluyan. May aratabok suga sa haro, may atrium delgado kag molo, kag may arama sa Mandurriao, mga baligya diri barato. Iloilo Supermart, Iloilo Supermart. Wow, 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 wow. Iloilo Supermart, may bargain araw-araw. Aton gilinin.
Ang radyo ko, maisong magdala kang issue. Ako si Josephine Yabut, isa ka taxi driver. Pilion ang imo radyo sa Iloilo. Aksyon! Radyo!
All rise, veuillez-vous lever. The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning to all. I would like to welcome all those inside and outside of this courtroom. Madam Courtroom Officer, could you please call the case?
Good morning, Madam President, Your Honors. Situation in the Republic of the Philippines in the case of the prosecutor versus Rodrigo Roa Duterte, case reference ICC 0121-0125, and for the record, we are in open session.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I am now going to ask the parties and participants to introduce themselves. Starting by Mr. Deputy Prosecutor. Could I please ask you to introduce yourself and to confirm to me whether the list of your team members that I received before the hearing is correct? Thank you, Madam President. Your Honours. The Office of the Prosecutor is represented today by myself. I'm Niai, Deputy Prosecutor. By my side, I have James Mirity, Case Manager. I have Mr. Julian Nichols, Senior Trial Lawyer. And behind us, we have Mr. Edward Jeremy, Trial Lawyer, Madam Robin Croft, Trial Lawyer, Madam Maria Berdenikova, Trial Lawyer, and lastly, Hannah Allen, Associate Trial Lawyer. These are the individuals comprising our team today, and I thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Prosecutor. Now, before moving on to the defense, I note that Mr. Duterte is not present in the courtroom today. Indeed, on the 20th of February 2026, the Chamber granted Mr. Duterte's request to waive his rights to be present at the confirmation of charges hearing. Pursuant to Article 61(2)(a) of the Rome Statute and Rule 124 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence. In this decision, number 387, the Chamber concluded that the conditions contained in the provisions were fulfilled, namely that Mr. Duterte has the right and knows he has the right to be present at the confirmation of charges hearing and knows the consequences of waiving this right. However, Mr. Duterte's counsel is present today to represent him. Counsel, could you please introduce yourself and confirm to me that the list of your team members that I received before the hearing is indeed correct?
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Your Honours. Indeed, the list before you is correct. May I introduce my team? To my left, I have Dr. Dov Jacobs. To my right, I have Ms. Havnit Sethi. Sitting next to her is Maître Alexandre Dezev-Dabi. Behind him, Attorney David Rancati. Sitting next to him, Maître Sandrine de Sena. And our two further lawyers, we have Nicolas Rousseau and also Kaylin Chen. And if Your Honour will permit me, there are also Filipino attorneys who are attending and supporting us today, and I'll briefly mention their names. Maître Salvador Mediadea, who Your Honours are familiar with from the initial appearance, Attorney Martin Delgra, Attorney Silvestre Bello, Attorney Alfredo Lim, Attorney Cesar Dulay, and of course, Attorney Salvador Panelo.
Nagagulo ang komentaryo sa Iloilo Aksyon Radio.
Oras sa Pilipinas, 6:41.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
Balik kita dre sa aton baro sa nga pagpangalagat. This time, ma-check kita sa Libano, no, kay AKSYON Desiree Diamante. Plus talang naton sa Libano ang, pila sila ka mga bagay-bagay, no, tuhoy sa confirmation of charges against former President Rodrigo Rua Duterte. Ang mga bagay-bagay sa Libano that we ought to know, no, sa kaso ni Anay Presidente Duterte. We have AKSYON Desiree Diamante sa Diamante. What we know, Desai, is that hindi lang ni subong adlaw, no? Ako rin kita magsala, do may schedule pagid ni sa Miyerkules, ginman or buwas, Desai?
Yes, Action Brian. So, kung kainagid man, nagsugod ang pinakauna or ginbuksan ang confirmation of charges hearing ni Anay President Rodrigo Duterte. So, ginapangunahan kaina ni Presiding Judge Julia Antonelia Motok ang pagbukas sa confirmation hearing kag ginsundan man sang opening statements nga o kung ginpangunahan man ni Mame Mandayan Niyang ang amo na siya ang Deputy Prosecutor Action Brian.
Oo, ang presiding judge ni Kagina si presiding judge Yulia Antoanella Motok, Romanian judge ni bala kung hindi kita sila magsala mo, Desai?
Yes, Action Brian.
Tapos ang abogado to Kagina, the Deputy Prosecutor sa International Criminal Court was Mame Mandiaye Niyang.
Yes.
Oo. I wonder kung anong nationality niya ni.
Oh. And then, ginusundan man kang kainan ni Lead Legal Counsel Nicholas Kaufman ang pag-introduce sa defense team ni Duterte. So, after sin-Action Brian, may break kay tungod nga after sa 3 ka oras o ang 3 ka oras ining hearing kag sa kada oras or sa kada adlaw nga ginatala ng hearing Action Brian, may break kada oras.
Oh, di ka subong ara kada sa dahig.
Ay wala.
Sabi ko naglupad ka sa Netherlands. Luwas ni sa opening statement kagina no sang prosecution, may statement man kagina ang abogado sang mga biktima, Desai.
Yes, Action Brian. So may nagkalain-lain nga statements so kan maging pahayag ang mga kung ano ang dapat nga o kung anong giging pakigbato sa mga defense dito Action Brian kag ginapahayag o kung ginplaster ang pila ka mga charges batok kay Duterte.
Okay. Now what to expect today is Monday, February 23, no? Boss, may harap pagid. Will there be another session tomorrow, Sai?
Yes, Action Brian. Ang next nga hearing, Action Brian, is buwas ang February 24 kag may pagasundan ini sa may February 25 and 26. Which
Submissions on the merits ni boss?
Yes. So kada hearing ni Action Brian, may ginaplaster sila kung every minute ano ang pagasundan. So for example, kung kaina, sa 5 p.m. to 5:30 dira nagsugod ang opening of the confirmation of charges. Ginasundan sa pagka 5:30 to 6 p.m. ginasundan sa prosecution's opening statements. Kaga may break Action Brian nga 30 minutes. So after
Balingwa niya ni kung diri pa sa aton sa mga korte ta di Action Be, mangwa niya sini nang do pre-trial siya bala. Sa pre-trial dira na ginabasa, okay, ikaw si mo nimo muna ginapasaka ni ikaw amo ning kaso nga ginapasaka kontra sa imo nimo muna. Tapos amo ni ang parte ni bara sa submission of merits sige ginapasa na dang tanan nga mga ebidensya sang prosecutor ang depensa naman no sang ginaasunto. So basically kung sa aton paningwa niya sila do pre-trial siya. Now tomorrow submission of merits hasta ni sa petsa 27 sa Biyernes, Sai.
Yes, Action Brian.
Do wala naman ni guro live no kung parang litan kiti masumiter na lang niya sa mga ebidensya ma-live pa kuno no kunong plastada.
Wala pa man Action Brian or ginahulat-hulat pa naton kung mahatag pa sa live ining ICC pero sa mga may every session Action Brian ginaplastar man nila kung anong sa first session sa second session, like for example later after sa break may common legal representatives o kan ang CLRV nga ginatawag nila Action Brian amo na ang common legal representative of victims ang mahatag sila sang ilaman nga opening statement for 30 minutes.
Ato na nakatag na ang ginulatan lang defense.
Yes, amo na lang kay iba-iba ang time or ang time gap Action Brian. So,
pero pagkatapos sinabi no, pagkatapos ang defense ano dayon ang plastada?
Defense opening statements na naman kag may another na naman nga break for 90 minutes.
All right. Sige, salamat gid Desai.
Desiree Jomansel sa Iloilo, AKSYON RADYO.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
AKSYON Desiree Diamante. Those are just the basic mga information no. Tuhoy sila banwa sa confirmation of charges. Standby sa aton sila nga mga suki. Oras na aton subong banwa. 6:47.
Sa panahon ngayon, kau ba'y sigurado?
Shortened form indicating the charges against Mr. Duterte. The full version is available publicly on the internet site of the court. The defense has not raised any objections in this regard. I would like to remind the public that the charges that shall be read out in a few seconds comprise allegations raised by the Office of the Prosecutor that the Chamber shall decide, that shall analyze in order to decide whether the evidence presented by the Office of the Prosecutor is sufficient in order for these charges to be confirmed. Madam Courtroom Officer, would you please read the charges?
The prosecution charges Mr. Rodrigo Roa Duterte with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of murder and attempted murder as a crimes against humanity committed between 2013 and around June 2016 and between around July 2016 and September 2018 in the Republic of the Philippines as follows. Count 1. Murder of 19 victims alleged to be criminals, including 3 children, who were killed in or around Davao City in the Philippines between 2013 and around 2016 by members of the Davao Death Squad, while Mr. Duterte was the mayor of the Davao City pursuant to Article 71A of the Rome Statute. Count 2. Murder of 14 victims labeled as high-value targets for their alleged criminality, who were killed in locations across the Philippines between around July 2016 and July 2017 by a network of perpetrators comprising state actors and others, referred to as the National Network, while Mr. Duterte was the president of the Philippines pursuant to Article 71A of the Rome Statute. And count 3. Murder and attempted murder of 45 victims, comprising 43 murders and 2 attempted murders of persons alleged to be criminals, including 3 children who were targeted in barangay clearance operations in locations across the Philippines between around July 2016 and September 2018 by members of the National Network, while Mr. Duterte was the president of the Philippines pursuant to Articles 71A and 25(3)(f in respect of the attempted murder of the Rome Statute. The prosecution alleges that Mr. Duterte is individually criminally responsible for all 3 of the above counts as follows. First, as an indirect co-perpetrator pursuant to Article 25(3)(a of the Rome Statute. At least between 1st November 2011 and 16 March 2019, Mr. Duterte and his co-perpetrators shared a common plan to neutralize alleged criminals in the Philippines, including individuals perceived or alleged to be associated with drug use, sale, or production, through violent crimes including murder. Mr. Duterte and his co-perpetrators implemented this common plan through the hierarchically organized structures of the Davao City Police and Davao Death Squad, and then the National Network. Within the framework of the common plan, Mr. Duterte made essential contributions to the crimes in counts 1 to 3 by A. Designing and disseminating the police to neutralize alleged criminals, both in his role as a mayor of the Davao City and also during his presidential campaign and as a president, including by endorsing the anti-illegal drugs campaign Double Barrel. B. Establishing and overseeing the DDS. C. Instructing and authorizing violent acts, including murder, to be committed against alleged criminals, including alleged drug dealers and users. D. Providing personnel and other necessary logistic resources such as weapons, including those to be used in the execution of the crimes. E. Appointing key personnel to positions which were crucial to the execution of the crimes. F. Offering financial incentives and promotions to police officers and hitmen to kill alleged criminals. G. Creating and maintaining a system in which perpetrators knew they would be protected, including through promises of immunity and shielding perpetrators from investigation and prosecutions. H. Making public statements authorizing, condoning, and encouraging killings of alleged criminals, both as a mayor of the Davao City and as a president of the Philippines. I. Authorizing state actors to take part in the anti-drugs campaign and temporarily revoking such authorization, including to placate public outcry. J. Publicly naming individuals and holding up charts from lists of alleged criminals, including so-called high-value targets, some of whom were subsequently killed. Second, in the alternative, Mr. Duterte is charged with ordering and/or inducing the charged crimes pursuant to Article 25(3)(b) of the Rome Statute and/or aiding and abetting these crimes pursuant to Article 25(3)(c) of the Rome Statute.
Merci, Madame la greffière.
Thank you, Madam Courtroom Officer. With regard to objections and observations under Rule 122, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, the Chamber notes that the defense submitted a number...
Oras sa Pilipinas, las 6:55.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
Ang lead prosecutor Galibanwa, no? Si Mr. Mami Mandiaye Niang, ano ni siya gani, no? From West Africa, from Senegal. We'll check sa dugang busy na ba no, nga mga impormasyon tuhoy ni no sa confirmation of charges kung sa kaso ni former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Check tabi sa redaksyon Paula Jane Ilambayo. Dugay-dugay ni 1 hour man lang ni no. So about mga alas 7 mid-action bem balik naman ni sila or sooner than that. Ano pagid ang mga bagay-bagay sini nga dapat naton sini may balawan tuhoy sa confirmation of charges sa Action Paula?
Subong Action Brian, tinagsugod na ni ang confirmation of charges hearing ni Anay Presidente Rodrigo Duterte. So, kahapon, bago pa lang ini action na Brian magsugod, may mga ginpang plastar na kung ano ang matabo sa confirmation of charges hearing. Ang pamangkot sang kadam-an aksyon na Brian kung anong mga posible nga matabo pagkatapos sang confirmation of charges hearing subong nga adlaw. So may mga ginplastar kita posted naman na sa aton nga Facebook page. So 3 ang posible himuon sang mga judges sang International Criminal Court. Una, kung makita nila nga bastante ang mga ebidensya nga ginapresentar subong sa batok kay Anay Presidente Rodrigo Duterte, so ma-proceed ini ang kaso kag di
kung sa aton pa makitaan probable cause be no.
Yes, oo. So may mahimo nga or padayon nini sa full trial hearing amo gid na.
And laban-laban porteklawi guro na no if it gets to that point. No, so that's the first possibility. Oo.
Ikaduha kung hindi bastante ang ebidensya nga ginapresentar or ginplastar subong ang mga huwes or mga judges, pwede nilang untaton ang hearing, i-dismiss ang kaso gid ni Anay Presidente Duterte. Ang ikatatlo is kung hindi pagid maathagan ang mga judges subong ang mga huwes sa ICC, pwede nila i-postpone ang hearing.
Na naman.
Oo, na naman ang hearing.
Oo.
Magpangayo sang dugang nga ebidensya sa mga sa council, aksyon na Brian, kag maghimo pagid sang dugang nga investigasyon, kag may araman nga pwede nila maamyandaran ang mga ebidensya kung sa lain nga kaso nagatumod or nagatudlo.
Alright. So, tatlo, kakomplikado gali, no?
Oo.
Para, especially, nibira para sa kampo ni former President Rodrigo Duterte, kiti kung mabitin na ng West, pwede ni nga mas lawig, mas mangin malawig ang iya sining nga detention dito sa dahig.
Oo, mga amo na ang mga posible nga matabo.
In fact, hindi tanigali insigida nga mabalan.
Hindi.
After today, no? So, lawig pa rin, dugay pa rin. How many days
Lawig
after today, makapagwa sang desisyon ng ang ICC?
May binulan pa. Na
Those 60 days kung hindi kita magsalay, no? So, that's about 2 months. So, after this week, no, after the confirmation of charges, mabatian naton sining opening statements, opening speeches, hindi na pa ni mabalaan gilayon kung anong mangin kapalaran ni Anay Presidente Duterte. Mulat na makita sin mga more or less 2 pa ka bulan.
Yes, amo ginahulaton naton.
Oo.
Kag sa subong samtang nagapadayon ni ang confirmation of charges hearing ni President Duterte, wala ni pasugtan sang ICC ang family visit. Kung magbisita dito sa detention na
samtang
facility.
nagapadayon subong.
Oo, subong.
Oo.
Kag sa mga masunod nga inadlaw.
Nga man, anong logic? After this week, guro, pwede na?
Pwede na, oo.
Oo, alright. So, sa kabudlay ni guro nga sitwasyon sila para kay Anay Presidente Rodrigo Duterte, no? Because, well, this gonna have to wait, no? I mean, imagine, sinti kung parang litan, abi nga may establisher, karong sige, may probable cause, we proceed to the trial proper. Pilanas digong? Daw chinta na siya, no? I think, he's already, 80? Do 80 or 81, no? Do mga dira-dira, si Anay Presidente Duterte. If it's going to proceed to a proper trial, it will take some time. Itili na to, ni Brasubong. Pre-trial pala ni Subong, porti dugi-dugay na it's going to render 2 months for a decision. The court is going to render 2 months before a decision. Di kung mag-trial proper pag iba si lawig pa, no? Really, the question here is if the former president could outlive, no, a trial proper. Kung sarangan niya pa, no, kung sundon ta, ang igilang ginambal that he is already old, he is already tired, he is already frail. No? So basically, amo nang plastada. Subong, 3 oras lawig ni Subong eh. We're down to the first hour. Action Paula, may 2 pa ka oras na yung session.
Oo. So balantayan
ang pre-trial.
Balantayan man ni Action Brian ang opening statement naman niya sang Defense Council ni Anay Presidente Duterte. Kiti na iplastar man nila.
Tano pagidaw, hindi ba nakabatian ta na to ang deputy
ang
prosecutor.
Prosecutor.
Tapos ang abogado sa mga biktima. Dugay-dugay, pagbalik ni mabatian ta naman ang side sang depensa.
Yes.
Side na ni former President Duterte. And what happens after that?
Amo ina ang bantayan.
Hindi ba 2 pa oras eh.
Oo.
Estimate nga rin natin, sino doon pila man lang kaminotos ang ginatag sa speech man? Do mga 20 minutes man lang? Do mga dira-dira guro sa 20? It was not a full half hour eh.
Oo.
Ang speech kaginato sang prosecutor, deputy prosecutor sa ICC, kag sang abogado sang mga biktima, pamilya sang biktima, do mga 20 minutes lang guro to?
Yes, hindi man kita makalawig ang ginatag nga oras, Action Brian, pero tama ka maunod ang opening statement nga ginahatag subong, Action Brian.
Oo, okay. Bantayan ta niya, no? We'll see kung ano ang actually kagiina bala ang aton lang sining nga naobserbahan, Action Paula. Kung sa aton sila matagpamati, no? Kung nagapamati kamo kagina sa speech sang abogado sang mga biktima, nag-aapilar sila sa feelings sa mga huwes, no? Kay kagina to I think was it the lawyer of the victims, or was it the deputy prosecutor sa ICC nga nagamuno siya nga gambal ganis digong at tampaon niya kamo mga huwes, hindi ba? Mabatian mo to kagina. So mamabatian naton sila kagina somehow that they're appealing to the sentiments sa mga huwes, Action Paula?
Yes, samoy na. Kay ano na subong ang abogado sang mga biktima is samoy na aksyon na Brian ang nahawira naton kay na sa opening statement ni attorney Joel Butuyan nga if this chamber prevents the boat from sailing by not confirming the charges, the victims will forever be moored in an island where the nights are filled with the screams and cries of their massacred loved one.
Although may nakita tari balaga ni Action Paula no nga the victims of the war on drugs kuno ni former President Rodrigo Duterte nalakip gani na diri si Kian de los Santos.
Oo.
Hindi ba na, no? Amo na ni isa sa mga hindi naton sa mention yan. Because really, they should have made it fair. Kaya nga, ang kay Kian de los Santos, hindi ba? Last year lang to, may nagpagwa desisyon ng Supreme Court about the case of Kian de los Santos. Meaning to say, it is being tried, it was already sentenced, and our judicial system already rendered a decision. May desisyon ng Korte Suprema na I think it was the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals. Pero nga ginlakip pa din. Well, amuning sistema. Wala to naton tanin, no? Laban-laban ni si Attorney Nicholas Kaufman ng ma-deliver sang speech. Dumay papel man sila ginpagwa kagapon. Ngara si Attorney Salvador Panelo.
Ang anong kaabogado?
Oo, hindi ba? Sa Sinoto. Amo gini mga close gin ni Digong si former Dole Secretary. Nilakip to sa listahan Anom ka mga lawyers. Duway gani si Harry Roque to?
Wala. Si Attorney Salvador Medialdea nga
Executive Secretary.
Nga pamilyar naman ang prosecution tungod kay siya niyang una nga nagrepresentar sanay presidente kag
Ay, tasig ba? Balik na sila? Alright. Sige, Action Paula. Balikan talang na karon. Salamat yan, Action Paula. Pabatita, no? The comeback of the confirmation of charges.
Counsel, you can continue because we were interrupted by the pause. Over to you, legal representative for victim, please.
Thank you, Your Honors. I was in the process of explaining the spread of impunity in the Philippines, and I will resume, Your Honor.
Okay, abogado, manigyapon sa mga biktima?
Not only among Filipinos in the Philippines, but even among expatriate Filipinos in faraway lands like here in The Hague. When we reported to the victims that their external legal representatives feel like fugitives who avoid our own countrymen here in The Hague, because chances are they are Duterte clones, they expressed their utmost concern that if we, their lawyers, feel threatened by mini Dutertes in a foreign country, we should imagine the far more intense fear they live with every day in their communities teeming with mini Dutertes. The victims also wish to convey that if the judges of this honorable chamber can be subjected to online harassment by Duterte clones, we should imagine the level of vulnerability the victims are exposed to in their poor villages. Your Honors, there is only one solution to stop the impunity propagated by Mr. Duterte from continuing to bring harm and suffering to the victims. And that is for this honorable chamber to confirm the charges so that witnesses can testify and evidence can be presented on the horrible crimes committed by Mr. Duterte. The testimonies and evidence presented will inoculate these mini Dutertes from the virus of impunity that has infected them. When they will see and hear the utter cruelty, the sheer brutality, in other words, the brazen inhumanity of the crimes committed by Mr. Duterte, and the humanity of those whose lives were violently taken, it will rekindle the embers of humanity that still remain in their hearts. Many of these mini Dutertes or Duterte clones are actually victims of massive doses of fake news widely circulated online. They need to be vaccinated with the truth, and the truth vaccine can only come from the testimonies of victims and evidence presented in a trial before this court. Truth is the antidote to the virus of impunity, Your Honors. The victims dread a future where charges are not confirmed in this case. It will mean that the virus of impunity will continue to spread and infect many more. Victims fear that Duterte clones will become an even bigger group that can elect another apostle of impunity as the Philippines' next leader. If that happens, an even more serious condition of impunity can take place in the Philippines, possibly worse than the orgy of violence that happened from 2011 to 2019, and this time there will be no ICC to run to for assistance and help. The victims humbly beseech this honorable chamber to reaffirm the two crucial objectives of the ICC identified in the preamble of the Rome Statute. First, to prosecute and punish the most serious crimes that deeply shock the conscience of humanity. And second, to put an end to impunity and to contribute to the prevention of crimes of unimaginable atrocities. If this chamber confirms the charges, this court will achieve its first objective of prosecuting and, if convicted, punishing Mr. Duterte for the unspeakable crimes he is charged with. But achieving the first objective will not automatically make this court attain its second objective. Merely putting forward the evidence gathered and the theory of liability of the prosecution will not necessarily resolve the second objective. This court should allow victims to testify, and the record of the proceedings must...
Alright, to go to ang signal nila to sa ICC action, Bem. Nagaload, no? Danay ka. This is a live stream.
The harrowing experiences of those impacted by against humanity. It is the brutality. In other words, the utter inhumanity of the crimes masterminded by Mr. Duterte, so that the people who adore and idolize him, the people who have become disciples of impunity, will see for themselves the inhumanity of the suspect. For this to happen, the charges should all be confirmed. The virus of impunity that has spread all over the Philippines is very grave and serious, Your Honors. Imagine a leader like Mr. Duterte, who proudly and publicly proclaimed his aspirations of following the footsteps of Adolf Hitler when he said, quote, "Hitler massacred 3 million Jews. Now there are 3 million drug addicts. I'd be happy to slaughter them," unquote. And yet, he is worshipped by a huge number of Filipinos. In so many countries, you will need to hide your adoration of Hitler. Mr. Duterte flaunted it, and his fanatics are unaffected by it. Mr. Duterte has pronounced so many other horrible declarations meant to promote and encourage impunity, as it will be detailed tomorrow by my colleagues. And yet, he is idolized by a multitude of Filipinos. The defense will claim that he was merely bombastic and acerbic when he made these statements. But if he were merely being pompous and flippant, the people who were killed should be alive and laughing today at his supposed pranks and stunts. Mr. Duterte did not only order the mass killing of people suspected of being drug personalities, Your Honors. He smeared them with accusations of being rapists, murderers, and dangerous criminals. Mr. Duterte imposed an inflexible condemnation that if you are a drug personality, you are automatically a dangerous criminal who has engaged in unimaginable atrocities. The families of those killed did not only suffer the loss of a loved one, their families were even disgraced with being associated with a rapist, murderer, or dangerous criminal. Even after their loved ones were murdered, many families were subjected to deplorable injustices. Instead of gunshot wounds as cause of death in their death certificates, families were shocked to see pneumonia, heart attack, stroke, sepsis, and other false causes of death that were instead written down. Other families were charged substantial amounts, sums the impoverished families could not afford, just to retrieve the bodies of their loved ones from the funeral parlor who were suspected by the families of being in cahoots with the police officers. Some family members were even arrested and imprisoned by police officers on false charges and for the purpose of preventing them from complaining. In one particular incident, Your Honors, a young man and his common-law wife were sleeping in their shanty when men in civilian clothes knocked down the door to their house. The men dragged the wife out of the room. The husband was already surrendering, and he even started to strip naked to show he had no drugs or firearm on his body. He said in the Filipino language, "Sir, malinis po ako, maghuhubad ako, sir." Translation in English, "Sir, I am clean. I will strip naked, sir." Still without mercy, the men shot and killed him. After killing the husband, they arrested the wife and accused her with falsified and non-bailable charges. When the deceased mother and cousin went to the police station to find out what happened to the young man, because they were not in the scene of the crime when it happened, the two were also summarily arrested and charged with fabricated crimes. If the Honorable Chamber confirms the charges in this case, the witnesses and evidence will show that those who were smeared by Mr. Duterte before they were killed, they were inside their houses, sleeping peacefully with their families, eating meals with their loved ones, playing with their children, or hugging their wives. Others were merely walking along the street, having snacks at the roadside eatery, or plying the road, earning a poor man's living. They were all doing ordinary, peaceful, and plain human activities. Confirming the charges will restore the dignity of those who were killed and the honor of their families. The prejudice suffered by the families of those killed did not begin and end with the killings of their loved ones. Each killing set off a chain reaction that is continuously churning out a daily crucible of harm, damage, and loss. By masterminding the mass murder of mere suspects, Mr. Duterte has brought irreparable and endless harm to the families. An overwhelming majority of those killed were the sole breadwinners of poor families. These families were dependent on each day's wage for their daily sustenance. They were hand-to-mouth families. With the death of their breadwinners, the widowed spouses, a majority of whom are women, have had to take on the roles of two parents. On top of taking care of their children and maintaining the household, the widowed spouses now have the additional burden of being breadwinners for their families. Families have been driven to even far more serious destitution, Your Honors. The damage to the children is immeasurable. Their development and upbringing have been permanently compromised. They have been walking through life with one missing parental limb. Losing a parent under very dire economic conditions and under the most violent circumstances results in wounds that will never heal and that will absolutely render them handicapped for life. And then there's the indescribable anguish of parents who lost a child. No parent is supposed to outlive a child. Parents suffer a lifetime of grief when a child dies ahead of them. And the lifetime grief is unimaginably worse when a child dies under the most inhuman circumstances. The crimes masterminded by Mr. Duterte did not only affect individuals but whole communities. Across the Philippines, numerous urban communities of the most impoverished villages were scarred by the violence and abuses wrought by a lawless anti-drug campaign that further worsened the misery and trauma of residents in marginalized communities. In one illustrative instance, Your Honors, after the father of a family was killed inside his house by police officers, the entire neighborhood was so traumatized that for almost 3 months, and during the coldest months in the Philippines, they abandoned their houses at night and instead slept in the open public market. They did not feel secure inside their houses because there would be no witnesses if the police would just barge in and shoot at them. In the public market, the presence of many witnesses, they thought, will deter the police from shooting and killing them. It is also the victim's view, Your Honors, that the charges should be confirmed because the resulting presentation of witnesses and evidence during the trial will force police and other law enforcement officers to confront the brazen depravity of the killing of civilians that they either personally committed or allowed to be committed during the Duterte reign of terror. In one operation, the police summarily killed 3 men, 2 brothers and 1 friend, in the very early morning. The police declared that the 3 were nanlaban. They fought back. But the neighbors saw otherwise. The whole neighborhood was so horrified at the macabre treatment of one of the fatalities. The bullet-ridden body of one of the 3 men was brought out from the 2nd floor window and dropped to the ground because the police could not bring the body out through the doorway. When the body hit the ground, the neighbors recoiled at hearing the body emit a cry, "Aray!" Translation in English, "Ouch!" The man was still alive when his body was thrown to the ground, and the police just left him to bleed to death. The trial will hold a mirror to the police force and compel them to see how they were turned into executioners and assassins, and their organization transformed into a gigantic criminal organization or turned into a killing machine by Mr. Duterte. The Philippine National Police and the drug enforcement agencies have not made any initiative to purify the corrupted minds of their officers and personnel to our knowledge. The trial in this case will be a tremendous teaching opportunity that can work to rectify the warped and depraved minds of Philippine security officers. The charges need to be confirmed, Your Honors, for the sake of the entire country, which has been desensitized or made numb by the massive incidents of impunity and the glorification of impunity promoted by Mr. Duterte. The whole Philippines needs to know the real story during those bloody years. There has been no opportunity for the entire country to really find out the whole truth of what happened. It has been hush-hush, tidbits of sporadic news, and always drowned out by trolls who mass produce and broadcast false, fake, and fabricated news. The victims also attach a very important historical significance to this case. If the Chamber confirms the charges, the trial proceedings will produce a historical record of the most bloody period of post-war Philippine history, a duty that the Philippine justice system has refused to perform. The historical account on the mass murder of so many Filipinos during the Duterte regime needs to be accessible to our future generations, just like the Nuremberg trials and the Tokyo trials, so that they will learn from it and not repeat the same mistake of selecting and glorifying leaders who preach and practice impunity. The prosecution has presented 78 instances of murder and attempted murder clarifying that these incidents are only representatives of the extent of the crimes committed against thousands of civilians, Your Honors. The victims beseech the Honorable Chamber to remember that Mr. Duterte's bloody rule, both in Davao City and nationwide, resulted in as many as 30,000 victims of killings, more than 300,000 victims of arbitrary imprisonment, and unaccounted numbers of victims of torture, sexual assault, and other forms of crimes against humanity. For many families in the Philippines, the charges brought for confirmation in these proceedings represent only a fraction of the reality the victims have endured. The victims beseech the Honorable Chamber to remember the hundreds of thousands of victims are banking on vicarious justice from this case. Finally, Your Honors.
Excuse me, Counsel, you have 5 minutes left.
Thank you. Finally, Your Honors, the victims wish to humbly underline that what is ultimately at stake in these proceedings is the supreme of all forms of human rights, the right to life. The right to life is the very foundation of every civilized society. The ancestors of every nation fought against invaders, colonizers, despotic monarchs, and fascist leaders in order to secure the right to life of their families, their communities, and the future generations. The heroes of every country sacrificed their lives to defend the right to life of their people. We as citizens of modern societies are inheritors and beneficiaries of the sacrifices of our ancestors who bequeathed to us the right to life. We owe it to them to defend the supreme legacy for our generation and for the generations to come. For the past few years, Your Honors, we have seen an increasing number of nation leaders who time-traveled from the Dark Ages and now swagger in modern times as if they own people's lives. These brutal and cruel leaders must be held to account for their brazen disregard of humankind's right to life. Our ancestors fought in the battlefield to secure a right to life. In these modern times, the battleground for the fight to protect our right to life is within the four walls of this honorable court. May the God of life, the God of humanity, guide the honorable members of this chamber. Thank you, Your Honors.
Merci beaucoup, Maître.
There you go, the lawyer for the victims, Attorney Joel Butuyan. We presume nga masunod sila diriba no, ang opening speech para sa depensa, no?
I thank Mr. Butuyan for his intervention, but I feel that I ought to remind him that this is a court of law which decides matters on the basis of evidence, not on the basis of political demagoguery, and not on the basis of a desire to effect regime change despite the democratic will. And certainly not on the basis of statements made by Ombudsman Jesus Crispin Remulla, who professed that domestic justice will be denied, according to Mr. Butuyan, because of the lack of forensic reports and police reports. Now, I don't know which case Mr. Butuyan's metaphorical ship sailed into, but he clearly hasn't read the evidence. Whilst he was speaking, we examined the evidence, and out of that evidence we found at least 35 reports substantiating 49 of the incidents which are mentioned in the document containing the charges. Your Honours, Rodrigo Duterte was and will always remain a unique phenomenon. His style of statesmanship was novel and unpalatable to many. His expletives and hyperbole grated, while his honesty and wild popularity irritated. He spoke openly, from the heart, sincerely and truthfully. And what a contrast between him and his successor in the Malacanang. For President Rudy, his word was his word, and the people knew it. For President Bong Bong, his word is for the wind, and the people will not forget it. Let me remind everyone of the letter which President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. signed, it's on the screen, and in which he gave a cast iron undertaking that his government, and I quote, will not assist the ICC in any way, shape or form. Well, as we know, he failed to keep that promise. Rodrigo Duterte was unconstitutional and unceremoniously hauled off to The Hague. And when called upon to defend his master's actions and the said letter at a Senate committee hearing, the then Secretary for Justice, once again Mr. Jesus Crispin Remula, persisted with the same dishonest theme. And I quote his words, "We did not assist the ICC. We continue with the very tenor of the letter that we did not assist the ICC and we did not have any contact with them." So he said, but with a document emanating from the prosecution team opposite and disclosed to us a mere week ago, not as information material to the preparation of our defence, but as exonerating evidence, we can now substantiate what we have suspected for a long time. The document comprises a transcript of a telephone call covertly recorded between 4 parties who cannot be mentioned in public, and one of these parties was boasting about how he was acting as the silent partner of President BBM, managing a scheme to funnel witnesses to this court while all the time ensuring that he could guarantee President BBM's plausible deniability. So it is indeed the defence case that President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. set out to neutralise Rodrigo Duterte and his legacy. Yes, Mr. Deputy Prosecutor, I used that legendary word, neutralise, so central and so essential to your case theory, because you know just as well as me that I'm using the term metaphorically. And now I turn to the substance of the charges, but before I do, a word or two about the geopolitical context. The scourge of illegal narcotics is not unique to the Philippines. As we all know, it afflicts Latin America, where I can name 3 countries where the death rate at the hands of vigilantes and law enforcement agents per capita population is higher than it ever was under Duterte. And as you should know, and you will hear from the prosecution, at any rate, the Philippines as a country is uniquely positioned to act as a transit hub for the trafficking of narcotics emanating from the cartels in China. And with or without Duterte, so we argue, the death rate would have kept on rising. Indeed, as we will prove with statistics and reports, the death rate flowing from narcotics-related crime actually increased after Rodrigo Duterte left.
Okay. Nagaload, no? The opening speech ni Attorney Kaufman for the defense. Alright, nagatiyog-tiyog ni. Damo guruga stream sa mga aksyon, Bem. Alright. Are? Away good, danay ka.
Firing line!
Court being said that Rodrigo did anything. The totally lawful Duterte campaign against illegal drugs and their suppliers took place when his administration was
Utod naman. Alright. Standby, no? Sa aton sila nga mga tagpalamati.
Firing line! Sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line! Sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line!
Nagtiyog-tiyog, no? Ining speech sa internet na, because sa kadamo-damo ni subong banwa sining naka-tune in bala subo. Ara na? Okay, action, Bem? Ado nagbalik na? Sige, be. Away, gid. Gatiyog-tiyog, gid. Timing maniyati siya sila ba, no? Kundiin nga dipinsa na subong, oh. Alright. Standby, anay, no? Sa aton sinimatag para mati para mapabati naton sila ba, no? Ang statement ni Attorney Nicholas Kaufman, no? For President Rodrigo Duterte. Away, gid. Daway, gid.
Firing line! Sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line! Sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line!
Alright, oras na ba nula 7:32?
This time check is brought to you by ACS Manufacturing Corporation.
Looking for the perfect bloom to brighten someone's day? Discover Penang's Flower Shop, your local floral haven right here on Isnard Street. Whether it's birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, or just because, our fresh handcrafted bouquets are designed to express every emotion beautifully. From elegant roses to tropical arrangements, we've got flowers that speak louder than words. Need something special? We customize, deliver, and make sure your flowers arrive fresh and stunning every time. Call us today at 0920-825-6483 or 0916-786-8896 to order, or drop by our cozy shop on Isnard Street where blooms meet heart. Penang's Flower Shop.
Sa syudad sang Iloilo, number 1 sa mga Ilonggo. Kompletong mga baligya, kasarangan gid ang presyo. May bargain araw-araw, ang discount nyo todo-todo. Dalik mag-grocery, Iloilo Supermart magkadto. Mahapos kadtuan, kung gusto nyo mag-grocery. Madamo ang mga branches, malapit sa inyo puluyan. May aratabok suga sa haro, may atrium delgado kag molo, kag may araman sa Mandurriao, mga baligya.
ACS Manufacturing Corporation, ISO certified, world-class quality.
ACS.
Ang Amon Radio, may pagdigit sa Iloilo. Aksyon Radio.
Kamatyan, tabanwa ang pagpadayon sa speech sang depensa.
Who continued to re-elect him time after time, term after term, on no less than 7 occasions over more than 2 decades. And throughout his 20 or so years tenure as the mayor of Davao, Rodrigo Duterte and his family transformed that city from an outpost of communist insurgency and criminal violence into what is now one of the safest cities, not just in the Philippines, but in the entire world. This was indeed the so-called Davao model, which the prosecution wants to persuade you was code for unbridled criminal violence. And this was the type of leader that the Filipino nation wanted in 2016. So, Rodrigo Duterte was elected into power, not in spite of, but specifically because of his firm and uncompromising commitment to upholding law and order. And after his election as president, Rodrigo Duterte remained a man of the people, without seeking to patronize the people. Gung-ho in his ways and with a belligerent tone, he spoke the tough tongue of the street, not the dissembling discourse of international diplomacy. He said what the people wanted to hear, but he said it in a way that offended sensibilities of world leaders unaccustomed to hearing it, one in particular, and that was what set him on the slippery slope to a prison cell in The Hague. And let me tell you how it works. It starts with the media, controlled by the powerful and the politically influential. With a sensational headline and a twisted editorial slant, the moguls sell their papers while promoting the partisan agenda of their backers in power. They highlight the...
Action! Flash! Report! Report!
Las 7:36. Pasudlong tanin ng flash report with aksyon para memorado. Action para, go ahead. Sino Action Renan Baido? Alright, Action Renan, go ahead, Action Renan.
Lalaki nga nagabike Action Brian, gintiro diri sa barangay Kabugaw, Sor, Pavia. Ang location sang shooting incident, kon pamilya ng atong piyang mga atong palamati sa atubang sang Baita Ridge diri sa Kabugaw, Sur, Pavia. Ang mga dugang detalye Action na Brian.
Din nagatubang din pakadto ang nagabisikleta, Action Renan?
Pakadto sa Banwa sang Santa Barbara.
Okay. Alright. Sa asin, ano ni, ang Vitarich din ni garing aside kung dito ka nagatubang sa Santa Barbara?
Kung ang shooting incident, there is a right side, ang Vitarich sa tabok, left side.
Okay.
Tubang kita sa Banwa, ha?
Oo.
Ang right ara subong sa kilid, sa karsada, nakasandig sa pader. I think...
Amo na makita ta sa video di subong ang bisikleta, pero ang biktima ara pa da?
Wala na action ba yung biktima para abot naton gindala ini sa ospital, hindi pa nato confirm kung hindi man niya ospital gindala ang biktima action bayan.
All right. Kakti, kumusta? Anong impormasyon nga nakuha naton dira subong? May impormasyon kita kung anong nakatiro?
Wala pa kita sa operasyon bayan sa information apat naton tipo ng investigador yung pangita pa naton sa sinimatriyon ang SWAT ari naman dire ang Pavia Police ara pa siya nag-investigar. Standby lang katasyon Brian until such time nga matipon na to ang detalye pala sa biktima kag subong man kasi may identity na gidman kita sa suspect gidman kag regarding man kung pila pa idadon sila nga biktima. So far ang nabalagid naton
may tricycle haw may makita kita dire nga tricycle nga do nahigtan sang police line action renan.
I think emo ina ang salakyan sa aton mga tanod nga nagresponde.
Okay, sa nagkadto dira sa lugar.
Yes.
Alright, mabalik lang kami later on sa dugang sino may impormasyon action renan.
Yes, Renan Baido sa Iloilo Action Radio.
Action! Flash! Report!
Stand by sa aton sila mga suki. Nabalikan ta ni Banwa the speech of the defense ni Materon dito sa The Hague.
Academics who formerly worked alongside the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Communications and complaints are filed, and the rest, as they say, is history. In any event, we're not gathered here today to judge a man on the basis of his coarse attitude or his vulgar language. This court has convened a confirmation hearing to verify whether substantial grounds exist to believe that Rodrigo Duterte, the people's president, together with various so-called co-perpetrators, over the years of his governance, devised a criminal policy of wholesale and wanton murder. And since we are in a court of law, it is worth stressing, although I should not have to, cases are decided on the basis of evidence, not supposition, not rumour, not spicy gossip, and certainly not on the basis of political rhetoric and bluster. Because at the end of the day, were it not for those belligerent and controversial speeches, there would have been no impetus to bring the people's president to The Hague. And when the prosecution's evidence is examined, I would ask you to keep an open mind and to question not just whether that evidence has been selectively presented, but whether there exists evidence which the prosecution has failed to produce. And I say this with justifiable cause, particularly with respect to the Duterte rhetoric. As we will prove during the substantive part of our submissions, the notorious speeches on which the prosecution relies have been cherry-picked to suit its narrative while ignoring the many other speeches when the former president tempered his bombastic language by clear reference to the principle of lawful self-defense. We, the defense, have read as many of these speeches as we can find. In fact, in our poky little office on the top floor of the furthest building away in this complex, we have a counter which ticks and ticks. And whenever we come across a speech which contradicts the prosecution's murder theory by reference to self-defense, we give a cheer. And the counter goes up once more, and we celebrate one more nail in the coffin of the prosecution's case theory. As the statistics stand as of today, in contrast to the 20 speeches on which the prosecution relies to prove incitement to kill, we have found 35 more which say the complete opposite. Let me give you two examples from the very speeches that the Deputy Prosecutor himself cited today. Let's refer first of all to the famous Pietà speech, which the Deputy Prosecutor referred to. So, this is what the Deputy Prosecutor said. Those of you who are still sober, those who haven't tried illegal drugs, if you don't want to die or get hurt, don't rely on the priests, including human rights advocates. They won't be able to prevent deaths, and so it goes on. But if we look further on in the very same speech, something which maybe the Deputy Prosecutor didn't do, This is what he had to say. To our police officers and other officials, do your job, and you will have the unwavering support of the Office of the President. I will be with you all the way. Abuse your authority, and there will be hell to pay, for you will have become worse than criminality itself. Well, there you are. You have it straight in your face. PECSO, exonerating evidence within what is claimed to be the prosecution incriminating evidence. I won't take up my time by showing you the second speech, but there is one. If I have time at the end, I will show it to you. So if you add to that another 10 speeches out of the 20 speeches on which the prosecution rely in its document containing the charges, after all, we are in a court of law and we rely on evidence. And what is the evidence that's produced of these speeches? 20 of them. 10 of them, I submit, and we will show this in the substantive part of our submissions, contain exonerating evidence which support the defence case theory. In other words, if you add the 10, which we've identified in the prosecution's 20, to our total of 35, we come to 45 speeches versus 10, which we say support the use of force only in self-defence. That is 350% more speeches in favour of our defence and 354% more reasons not to confirm the charges. And you can bet your bottom dollar that at the end of today's proceedings, either the victim's self-styled legal assistant to ICC counsel or a prosecution intern will be tasked with scouring the web looking for the means to prove Kaufman wrong. And I will declare it, and I'll declare it loudly and clearly, as if the prosecution didn't know it already. It's not enough to state that since the former president made those extremely inflammatory statements and deaths occurred, that he must, as a matter of course, be criminally responsible for those fatalities. At this stage of the proceedings, the prosecution needs to show substantial grounds to believe that the former president actually desired and foresaw that people would be killed as a result of his incendiary language. For the prosecution to assert that Rodrigo Duterte hoped for deaths to occur or was recklessly indifferent as to whether deaths would occur, which he was not, that's insufficient. So once more for the record, Rodrigo Duterte's language was aimed not at suspected drug pushers as the prosecution would have it, but directly at those poisoning society with their substances, and not, I stress, with lethal intent. His rhetoric was calculated to arouse fear and obedience, to instill fear in their hearts, and to inculcate a respect for the law in their minds. Nothing more, nothing less. That was his intent, and it was not criminal. And as many of these drug pushers demanded to enter prison, I remember seeing the images on the television, lining up to surrender and to enter prison. Now, I challenge my colleagues opposite to prove otherwise, because as we all know, in a criminal process, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. They brought this case and they need to prove it. Rodrigo Duterte need not convince the world of anything, and that is to his fortunate advantage given his current medical condition. And he stands behind his legacy resolutely, and he maintains his innocence absolutely. Now, I turn to the general fairness and objectivity of the investigation, which, as we all know, is meant to be an impartial evidence-gathering exercise. As an ex-prosecutor myself, I'm used to investigating agencies pursuing all reasonable lines of inquiry, assimilating all testimonies, and digesting all documentation and forensic evidence, recommending who to target for prosecution, but not so with this prosecution. When we, the defence, study the course of the investigation in this case, one thing is plain as a pikestaff. The chief prosecutor of this court, Mr. Karim Khan, not only failed miserably to carry out his duties under the Rome Statute, requiring him to examine exonerating circumstances as well as incriminating, but he single-handedly contaminated it, so we alleged, by pursuing a one-track crusade with a view to a predetermined objective. Let me explain. Although the ICC officially authorized an investigation into the so-called Philippines situation in late 2021, it was deferred a few months later back to the Philippines for the official investigation to resume only in late 2023. But the real meat of the investigation into Count 1, relating to the activities of that fictitious construct, the Davao Death Squad, had effectively started way before then, with the sole objective of nailing Rodrigo Duterte. Indeed, all the way back in 2018, during its so-called preliminary examination, the prosecution had an individual who will be referred to as P1 handed to them on a silver platter. This P1 had been interviewed at an earlier date by none other than Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, in his former capacity as a private lawyer and the self-professed legal.
Alright, nautod na naman. Action, Bem. Inido from the source gid no, from the ICC, gid International Criminal Court. Dumakapila ka beses ni mautod niya kung ang sa dipinsa na yung speech siya, oh. From the source gid no, ang pag-utod. Anyway, may mga obligasyon kita diri Banwa. Balikan tala na soon as makabalik sa Banwa ang live stream no, from the International Criminal Court. Las 7:48.
This time check is brought to you by ACS
Car check, car maintenance, car batteries, kag goma sang imo salakyan, isa lang ang katui. Uy, Marketing Goodyear Auto Care. High-tech ang mga gamit, eksperyensyado pa ang mga mekaniko. Gani ang pagkondisyon sang salakyan mo. Sigurado, tested and proven na sang kadamaan ang serbisyo sang Uy, Marketing Goodyear Auto Care. Gani, basta parte sa kondisyon sa salakyan ang problema, bisitaha ang Uy, Marketing Goodyear Auto Care sa Diversion Road, Mandurriao, Iloilo City, located near the entrance of Boardwalk, Iloilo.
Visit Oil Marketing Goodyear Auto Care.
Iloilo. Are you ready? Are you ready to sail with pride? Saksihan ang matahong kag maduagon nga mga paraw nga magapaindis-indis sa 53rd Iloilo Paraw Regatta Festival. Mangin kabahin kag mag-enjoy sa nagkalain-lain nga aktibidad. Feel the breeze, enjoy the vibrant coastal vibes, and experience the rich Ilonggo culture and tradition that have sailed through generations. The 53rd Iloilo Paraw Regatta Festival. Sailing forward, guided by tradition. February 22 to March 11.
Ako si Hannah Giselle Erta, ang radyo ko maabdik sa pagkuha sa mga balita. Pilion ang imo radyo. Sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio.
Kami ang taga Global Parking Management Incorporated. Ang among radyo, maghinuligon sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio #1.
Kung nasaan ang aksyon, naroon ang balita.
Franco, ang akon nga radyo dalang pan sang Gina Pigos.
Pilion ang imong radyo sa Iloilo, AKSYON Radio.
Kung nagaulan, kag ginabaha ang dalanon, may peligro nga nagahipos lang, pero nagalapta. Ang leptospirosis. Ini sakit nga dalas ang leptospira bacteria nga makuha sa...
Madasig magkuha sa balita sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio!
La 7:52. Manabalik naman o sining live stream pamatian ta.
Of which he concealed his former role as the victim's counsel, who had deemed our client a suspected murderer as far back as 2018 and right up to the very day before this pre-trial chamber issued its arrest warrant. Your Honours, over the next few days, we hope to convince you of the wholly insufficient nature of the evidence against Rodrigo Duterte. We will show you that the paltry number of speeches on which the prosecution rely do not manifest criminal intent. We will also convince you that as hard as they tried, the prosecution's investigators couldn't get even one of its criminal cooperating witnesses, whose reliability is next to zero, to admit that they heard the former president, Rodrigo Duterte, give an order to kill at any time relevant to the charges, or with respect to any of the incidents. And we hope that when you conclude your deliberations, Your Honours, that you will dismiss these grievously misplaced and politically motivated charges. We will ask you to send Rodrigo Duterte back to his family, and we will ask you to give back to the Filipino people their tatay digong. Thank you, Your Honours.
All right.
Presiding Judge, thank you very much, Mr. Kaufman. We shall now suspend. This is the end of initial statements, and this is the end of this morning's hearings. We will take a 90-minute break and resume at 2 in the afternoon. Thank you very much.
All right. Ma-resume sila kuno later on si Rebano.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
Maniman kita rin sa aton si Masuki, meron kita bara Santon Coffee Gold Mix. Sa mahilig mag-inom sang kape, direct kita bara sa Santon Coffee Gold Mix, isa ka healthy nga sahi sang kape. May isang kape bara sa mangosteen, chia seeds, turmeric, moringa, glutathione kag collagen. Lunsay healthy, puno inibano sang benepisyo. Nagabulig, agod mabato ang aton sa kakapoy kay nagabus inibara sa aton natural energy. Nagabulig sa paginahan sa aton sa nga focus kag mental clarity. Nagasuporta sa aton metabolism kag digestion. Santon Coffee Gold Mix. Kung may pamangkot, magtawag lang kay Dr. Raimundo Emperado sa 0917-778-7200.
Ang produktong ito ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Standby sa aton sila ba mga suki, no? Kay pagbalik naton sila will be having aksyon para may Murano. Barikante na ba ang shooting incident dito sa Pavia? Oras na ba no, 7:55.
This time check is brought
Lucille's Premium Catering. Celebrate with confidence. We serve only premium, nothing less. Premium fresh ingredients. No MSG. Staff trained in hygiene and sanitation. New linens. Your food is prepared by a professional chef. Lucille's Premium Catering. We are the preferred choice of Ilonggo's major corporations and LGU. So sit back and enjoy the party and let Lucille's Premium Catering take care of the rest. Call us at 033-500-3405 or 0999-228-9229.
Ang Amon Radio may pagdidikit sa Iloilo. Aksyon Radio number 1.
Dakop ka, daog ka, Taxi Drivers Edition. Magpamati sa Aksyon Radio Iloilo. Kung madakpan ka sa Aksyon Radio Iloilo team nga nagapamati sa estasyon, hatagan ka sang kupon para sa 10 ka litro nga libre nga gatong. Bantayan, dakop ka Daog Ka, Taxi Drivers Edition sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio.
Ako si Alan Romiliosa, taga Kalaparan, Sontarten, Arevalo. Driver sang Vikings Taxi. Dako na nga salamat sa Aksyon Radio nga dako ang bulig sa among pamigaduhan nga pagbiyahe sa tanong taxi. Dami pa kapitin siya sa mga taxi driver. Salamat ko nakadakop pag nakadakop sa programa sang dakop kadaog ka taxi driver edition sa Polo Kalitro. Imbitar kita sa mga kaupod ko mga taxi driver. Hindi kita mo mamatay ito mo permi sa Aksyon Radio para makabil mga mo sang Polo Kalitro nga promo sang Aksyon Radio para kamo man madakpan sa Iloilo Aksyon Radio.
Dakop Ka, Daog Ka, Taxi Drivers Edition.
Ako, si Mayan Calantas, ang akong radyo, may panindugan, piliang ang imo radyo, sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio.
Kami ang outstanding ng list ng Iloilo Central Elementary School. Ang amon radyo, may panindugan kontra illegal nga droga sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio.
Iloilo banwa ko, ang tanan ginhatag mo. Iloilo banwa ko, kanta ko para sa imo. Yes, sir! Tempo naghambal ang aton nga mga katigulangan. Panwata palangga, hindi atagi problema para magkalipay ta. Iloilo banwa ko, ang tanan ginhatag mo. Iloilo banwa ko, kanta ko para sa imo. Sang una nga bataon pa, tawalakit sang paghigugma. Sang banwa kong natawhan, balatsagon pa sa bayan, kung ano ang maabtan. Akon iligin hinusulan, ang akon tanan nga ginpang.
Kaya solid magpaputi, anti-yellowing din.
Pinakalapit nga ospital, no?
Oras time punto las 8. This time check action para memora. No, may mga dugang kita sila barang impormasyon tuhoy sa shooting incident kaging report kagay na sa Kabugaw, Pavia. Anong pinakauli? Dira action, Farah?
Ginahibalo pa naton, action bayan, kung ano, dinala sa hospital ang nagkabisiklita na natiruhan diri sa Kabugaw, Pavia. Ang exact location, din action bayan.
Anong impormasyon? Man, kaya kasulog impormasyon is this? Gintiro ko no ining ang nagabisiklita kag gindala pagid kuno sakay sa salakyan sang nagtiro action, Farah?
Amo ng mga initial nga information nga gina-clear pagit action Brian kay ginalan to naton mas may operasyon o kung may good bypass operation ng kapulisan pero wala pa ni confirmation action Brian. Ang initial diri ni ara man gani mga informasyon nga taga Kabugaw sa Pavia man ang ini ang nagabisikleta.
Hindi pa ni klaro kung ano natabo ni sa gintiro?
Basta ang pagkabalo nila, ari yung mga barangay officials. Sir, sino di galing nga ari di kaina? Ari yung nasabot na. Mamangkot na lang kita di action bayan. Oo. Dili kay sir, nag-live kita diri. Sir, ano ganing ngalan ta? Saan sa radio? Kagawad lang. Kagawad, isa sa mga barangay.
Kagawad sang Kabugaw, sir?
Yes, oo. Ano natabo diri kaina, sir, based sa imo information nga na tipon sa palibot?
Ang wala mong actually nakakita siya ni security guard ng Baytaret.
Oo.
Yung paglupo ko, no, ginidalaga nila, ikataon niya sa balay, disgawad, galing, way mapukakadto dayon. Pag abot namin diari na ang swap niya sa...
Naabutan niyo pa ang biktima?
Wala.
Pero ano ko no information, how? May anong nagdadulog sa iya, anong nagdulog sa iya, nakasakay sa ano?
Auto ko nga pula, nga biyos.
Inasundan siya. Auto nga biyos, ginpunduhan siya, tapos anong natabo?
Mo to may lang pati ang lupo kag security, itulan daw ni ano dyan, siguro pag tapos yung karga walang puno sa nakatupao.
Pila ka lupok?
Kami ano kung pagway makami kano kung siya gito taga diri.
Pila ka lupok na batian di?
Duha
ka lupok. Ano, tiro siya, pasakay sa salakyan.
Amo na nang nambal sa security sa kaysa. Adi amo gitong pamangkuto mo kaysa ginakita diri.
So information kano pangalan?
Hindi pa makinikasyon kung siya gid.
Oo.
May identify na niya na bike ko basi ba lagi mulam sa iba.
Ining na-identify nila, no? Taga Kabugaw Sur.
Man sa iya.
Oo.
Kasi pa kung makaano kung siya gid mo.
Oo.
Ang persona.
Ang bike kanina identify nyo na isa sa ginapanagihan sa isa sa mga residente dira sa Kabugaw Sur, pero ginibalo nyo pa kung saan nagagamit.
Oo, kung siya gid.
Okay, basi may nakahulam.
Ang bike na iya gid.
Pero initially, sir, ang nagagamit sa amos na bike, ano your personality nyo? Or may monitoring ka man mas-proud siya? Initially lang ako siya.
Ano hindi siya? Ano man ni residente? Buot man nga bata. Why man ni ano dyan?
Mga pila pang edadon?
Yan sinanay, it's barangay kagawad mo na. Kagang
Silang sa idaro.
Tapos mga ilan si Mark, mga 40. Why pa no? Why pa siguro, bata.
Mga 30 tahon?
Mga 30 taon na di, sir.
Sige siya bata.
Alias Mark Konsyagitman.
Kung siya gitman. So, why pa confirm kung siya gitman.
Yung kitala to sa auto, may pila sa tumanaan.
Tama po. Basta security mo sa
Oo. Ang auto man to. Wala may balo ako din gidala.
Dito ang pinakamalapit na dirang hospital da sa dirang location na sanitarium na Santa Barbara.
Oo.
Hindi na to way tapos balita.
Oo. Ang area, AKSYON Brian, halin kasi Lilo City pa kato, Santa Barbara, diri sa right side. So kung pilason din man siya, gindala sa hospital, ang pinakamalapit, mga malubo lang sa 1 kilometer sanitarium. Kung pabalik naman sa city, pwede sa dalon sa Asia Pacific. Oo, kung pakato sa
dito sa Mayungka.
Oo. Ma-check ka bala sa tabok sa security guard.
Ang hindi ko gets action para mo niyo. Nga wala dira sang police, local police sang Pavia?
Wala, di subong.
Hindi bala, kaya makita ta di SWAT eh. Special Weapons and Tactics, this is a different unit.
Malibot kita. Ari ka sabi, aday, kilid at sa alagyan,
amo nang ginalibugan sa ulo ko because if this is a crime scene right now, hindi pala dapat kuntari, may investigador gid yang Pavia, nga ra dira sumong sa location?
Oo, lantaw na.
Orang makordon sang area, ang local police gid yang may jurisdiction ang Pavia Police.
Oo, nilang kita. May aring na isa ka pulis. Sir, ay gatawag pa siya.
Oo, amo na hindi ta mensinihan kung anong plastada.
Pero ang ari di subong SWAT na iya sang municipality sang Pavia.
Oo.
Ang investigador nag-istorya pa subong sa ila.
May ara gid man investigador ang Pavia dira.
May ari isa ka pulis pero ang ilang hepe wala diri sa subong. Most probably ginantaw to nila ang area diretso kag pabalik naman AKSYON Ryan kay wala gid diriya sang mga iban pagid nga mga kapulisan amo ni nagkatawag pa sa abi.
Lantawa dabi pero panilag dabi palibot mo kung may mga basiyo na nabilin da. Way pa risoko hindi bla?
Wala, SWAT.
Kaya di ba bisan buhi basta may shooting incident dapat ano to, siya i-secure na sang soko?
Oo, dapat gid eh.
And how many minutes ago dun mga pila na ni ka minutos nagligar butang ta mga 30 minutos na guro?
Oo, sobra 30 minutos.
Oo, sobra na. Pero do wala pa din dahom sa gyapon bla?
Oo. Kay amo niya.
May makita ka dira nga blood splatter, dugo, action para?
Kung wala diriyo natapunan sa sang mga tanom, ang nakita na naton di is bisikleta, yung nagyahan sang biktima. Pero wala pa gyud ang iban nga mga recovery kay ginahulat subong nga maimbestigaran.
Kagina gani sang gin-report nga aksyon rin nang una na dumdum naton siya nga ginhingagaw bala sa ospital. Asang mga nagresponde no. Ginhingagaw po ospital to ang biktima.
Oo.
Kay wala
Pero,
na dira sa area eh. Pero nakita ya kuno sang testigo to nga gwardiya sinakay kuno sa salakyan nga ginasakyan man sang nagtiro.
Oo, pula sa nga salakyan ang information dito nga naga-bike ni ang lalaki. Samtang naga-bike sa amin nagasunod sa iya nga pula na salakyan. Ang pula nga salakyan nagdulog kag may duha ka tawo nga nagpanaog. Pagpanaog ng duha ka tawo, ginbutong ni ang naga-bike kag may nabatian nga duha ka lupok sang pusil, ginsakay ang nagabisikleta nga lalaki sa auto, tumiritso sa bayan, wala na hibaluan kung sa punta, kaya pwede ka maka-U-turn, pabalik sa city, pwede ka man makadiritso, sanitarium kompilasyon siya, kaya pwede ka man makaliko pa right, may likuan para sa pa right. So subong, wala pa ni baluan, kundi na to pakadto, kag ginahulat-hulat naton, kung basi, malamihara, pag yung latest investigation, kung may information, kung posible kay kung kaysa mga muning nga incident, ano siya nang may mga operation ng police.
Budlay, anong klase operation nga nagabisikleta, labyan nyo yan, gauto ka mo, tiroon nyo?
Oo.
Hindi niya, ano klase operation naman? Drive-by? Shoot, drive-by rin? Hindi ba mga balka drive-by, nang nalabyan mo na bla kagratraton mo, bla mo na?
Oo. Lantaw na to karon kung i-confirm ta na, kay niya raw information pala niya sa Brian.
Yeah.
Umakot ka sa...
Gani kido-idok, ambot ko na anong pastada ni subong nga? May hot pursuit operation sila, ginalagas nila tong auto na naman?
Oo. Sir, makot ka na initial. May ara kita sa hot pursuit operation. Anong plano sa nga pagya police na incident?
Yes ma'am, nang aton nga chief of police sa pagpanguna ni Police Captain Rizquel Prescrito ma'am aton nga YC. Nagakandak ka sinasangat pursuit operation to determine kung sino ang aton nga victim kag ang possible arrest of the suspect.
Okay. So wala yes, hindi niya police operation?
So parang nabtanamon, amo na lang gid na ma'am nabtanamon, bike na lang kag wala na tawo.
Oo.
So base naman sa kaya ang gwardiya nagtawag dito sa amo na bima mo. Warwasang baytarit kay nakabati ko na sila sang isa ka lupok. So dayon ang pagbati nila ka lupok may nagwa nga duha ka tawo sa salakyan nga either maroon or red nga Mirage or Ertiga. Dayon kay di man sila gid kita kay tungod nga na kag natabunan ka salakyan ang diri nga Porsche o ang sabay. So amo na kag nabatian ako no nga may gapangayo tabang after sa lupok. So dugay-dugay mga 3 to 5 minutes siguro nakita nila nga gin targa man ang biktima kag gindala nila going to Iloilo City.
Pa syudad nga direksyon.
Man nga to. Dili nga gito mismo.
Adiri lang mo. So dito ayon sa Sige.
Alright, so confirm niya it was not a police operation, Action Farah?
Yes, hindi sa police operation, ginakadak sa police operation, ang kapulisan sa Pavia, kay Miray sa Tabocali. Sang
naka-U-turn nag-U-turn.
Oo.
Bumalik pa kadto sa direksyon sang syudad, although hindi niya bot silingon nga base sa syudad gid mamakadto base way takbalo eh. Damo posible nga agyanda eh.
Matabok kita sa piha. May truck. Pero kay ang area dito pong sa Baytari Action
Ryan. We're looking at a case of kidnapping ning gwa niya sini eh.
Oo. Hulat-hulat kita kay matabok kita para makatapos statement pala sang security guard sa tabok. Kay ang
by the way, lain niya banuang abduction eh because when you say abduction niya kun babae niya eh. Abduction refers to taking a woman against her will, hindi ba? With lewd designs, no abduction. Lalaki niya eh. No, so lalaban-laban siya ni. This is a potential case of kidnapping, Action Farah. Kag tigin tiro pa eh.
Di pa po sa nanay clear ta kung nakita nila nga dugoon kay ang area tupong ni sa U-turn slot. So kung ang salakyan tupong sa U-turn slot ti nagpreparar gid action Ryan sa dire nagkuabuilo balik sa syudad abi nga direksyon pero di pa
Hindi na mo na ma-visualize eh. May maka-live feed ka mo dra sa location?
may live feed kita kay na pa action
Okay.
Ryan. Oo.
Kaya para makita tabla kung ano kalayo ni ang lugar sa ila sinigin U-turnan?
Tupong lang gid siya sa return slot.
At directly tupong gid?
Oo.
Okay. Kung as in directly tupong gid, meaning to say, very rough left turn ang salakyan para makadiretso to sa U-turn?
Kung sa ulado mo ang lugar, kag kung tempohan mo gid action Ryan, ang pag U-turn sa area, ti makabuylo kagid sa lugar, kag makapabalik ka sa syudad. Kadamo sa mga U-turn slot, long shot ni nga ton nga live, may another live kita sa long shot na siya.
Sige be.
Giminan lang ang camera, pero mamangkot kita diri sa security guard.
Basara, man dira ba lang security guard sa area? Basara pa siya dira gyapon.
Wala kami naka-live sa Facebook, mamangkot na kami.
Why lang tsura?
Oo.
Makita mo na yung gate sang Vitarecho?
Hindi. Ari kita subong sa area sang Vitarecho.
Okay.
So, tabok sin-action Ryan.
Okay. Tabok sang kundi na tabo.
Oo.
Pero ano ni man, kay makita ate bala may bisikleta rin sa mga hilamon. Do may gate ni pasulod. Ano na da pasulod?
Iya ka Caltex man ading naka
Opisina guro ni?
Hindi. Iya gini Caltex nga signboard pero private property na
private
siya.
property na pasulod
Wala signboard sa gwa. Sir?
Okay. This is we're looking at the potential case na of murder ni laban-laban eh. Tiwal-tibuin pa man to. Way takbalo ko na ng plastada niya to eh.
Wala kami video. Atong kamera ko. Mamangkot na kami sir, hindi lang natong pagpangalanan. Ano to kina sir, ang natabo diri antes na kitaan nyo nga may ginsakay nga sa lakyan?
Gabi minabatean mo lang kami sa kalupok mo. Amo lang na, amo man lang ng namon.
Pila isa o kundo ha?
Medyo man kami, way mga minagmahan niya mo na itong natabo.
Isa o kundo ha?
Isa lang.
Oo. Nakita nyo ginsakay sa salakyan?
Wala ka niya, kay dire kami.
Pagwa nyo sa ina.
Tapos na nakaway na tao. Tapos na may mga tao na nagatulumpok. Amo na to balik.
Sino nagtatawag police sir?
Huwag kami idea, ma'am. Kaya huwag mga miyan na ganun mo kay pag-ano naman sa namin ng police namin.
Mo lang to sa bayan na. Sir, salamat kita. Oo. Sa mga
Doon natahap sila maghatag impormasyon?
Ang ila gani nga panumdum sa aton wala lang live face na siya. Wala ta magipakita ang iya nga isura for the safety sa ang aton nga mga na makabig nga witness sa nga kapulisan.
Pero ulayhon be, may nabatian pa siya nga nagsinggit patabang, nangayo patabang ang gabisikleta.
Nagtalikod siya kay nagkaon siya. Mabahap sila before
balanta na medyo may reluctance bila may pagpangduwa magatag impormasyon. Kita sino man bindi ni matahap man. Sa mo nga klase sang plastaday ng bisikleta kay mo ilabyan ka lang imo palokpan kay mo. Again, klarohon talang pila ka mga bagay-bagay so far. Wala kita nakaibalo kung gintiro gid siya or wala takbalo ba si warning shot lang bala? Nga sulod di palokpan ta ka mo ni matapos at palupok way takbalo action para. Kung gindirekta gid ya tiro nga igo or whatsoever. Kaya parang ang impormasyon lang yung subong mo niyo. Nakabati sang lupok ang mga gwardya. Kagina sino sa kagawad, manabatian pa kuno nila gapangyo tabang. Ginsakay sa salakyan, ining nagabisikleta, that's all we know. Way kitak balo kung may igo to siya or kung gintiro gid siya. Action para. So, basi kidnapping ni okay kung ano da.
Duha ka lupok pero isa lang ang nabatian sang gwardya.
Posible. Kung galing king hambal to kagina to ni kagawad, tong nanugid siya, gwardyaman, di ba?
Oo, 4 sila subong ay nagapanyapon sa Vitarit.
Ati ba siyang nasugilanon mo to, isa lang nabatian niya?
Di pa mangkota siya. safety ang iya nga ano nga hindi na siya magpa-live sa iya itsura. Apat sila pero antes kita ginatubang nagisulanay sila ng Action Ryan. So kung amo na anay mas naga pangalang-alang man siya kag naga kabalaka mabala sa safety. Nagtabok kita kay bago lang ginagabot ang soko. Process na nilang area.
Sige be.
Ano bago lang gid sila. Ala nang soko, naga-plaster sila sa ilang mga dapat nga himuon. I-check nila kung may mga recoveries. Ato galay man. Ay palilayo pa lang.
Sige be. Kung basi may mga basiyo bla?
Medyo madalo. May ano talaga di flashlightan ta lang para makita gid. Action Ryan lang diba? Oh. Ang ginahimo subong i-flashlightan tapos ang tawon
kadulom pa biso mo kag may mga hilamon pakabulay-budlay nga ran sila mangita basiyo sa kapariyo sa nga lokasyon.
Kagang tanom abi kinanglan mo gid sa busision.
Oo. Ti dulom pa nga daan.
Ang only recovery sa subong nga makit-an is bisikleta.
Oh, bike.
Nga konsi kagawad sa kaina sa mga barangay officials is ginapanagliyahan kag masami makit-an nga ginagamit ni alias Mark. Pero
mga 30 tahon.
Kon siya gidman. Pero confirmed na karon sa police kon siya gidman si alias Mark. And then sa mga ilang information sa lugar Action Ryan. Wala pa di ang police gate ang pabiya. Ang hepe bala sang police it say ano lang gid
This is a possible kidnapping case mo ang ginalantaw tadi and a possible murder or attempted murder. Wala hindi pa bimaplastar kung naigo siya Pero atag niya nga may kidnapping ni kay pinilit ko sakay sa auto. So ari isa rin ka pamangkot kung di ini naggalabay ang bike inang dira siya sa sidewalk nagabisikleta kundra sa bike lane.
Sa sidewalk.
Okay. That would explain kung dira sa sidewalk na ayon nga manghilamon ni na nabili ng bike.
Oo. Kagangamon ni, ang masanag siya tuod. Pero kung ara ka sa kilid, hindi ka gid makitaan gid sa Brian. Kaya dulom sa gawa.
Oo. Ginmanmanan na ni siya inang ginsundan na bla.
Oo. Di ko nag-U-turn, wala siya gindala sa sanitarium. Ano to, may additional doon sa police. Mangko na to, additional. Aring istoryahan na yung sabong pabiya, police, kag ang taga-soko, kung ano ang plasada. Pero sa recovery, naghahatag subog na turnover sang
may nakita sila?
Wala pa.
Anong gina-turnover?
Ang mga dugang information so gina-brief anay ginapamalo anay sa pabiya police sa taga-soko kung anong ilang nga mga initial na mga information so buong bago pa lang ang isa sa mga person sa soko ginasasay tananay ang area ginalantaw kung basi may mga recoveries pa dire mga dahil lang hindi takita kasi takan pala
pero panilag din ay kung ano ng
at ano to
may mga dugo sa nakita daw kung ano?
Wala. May dugo sa kilid sang pader.
May ara gidman?
Oo. Ara ba na reseta?
Indikasyon nga basic na igo gidman?
May pilas.
Oo, or may pilas siya. May dugo. O gali kiti basi dugay na nada?
Pula siya.
Or basi agsik sang pintalang daw?
Oo, natawon pa. Nagrepresentan pa. Okay. Naging tahapay yung mga tanom, sugang ng flashlight at ng Brian. Tahapay ang tanom para makitaan ang mga kung ano pa lang pwede nilang makita, mamahimo nilang makitaan.
Damo sila o ginagapangusisa
Tatlo sila nga sa police line, may bitbit silang isa.
Napainta nila garo ni kung may basiyo bla?
Oo, one. Sa ano na siya na? Fire cartridge.
May ara? Pero dumigin po John?
Siya man. Nilagid. Izon na ton. Extra.
Apat ni mata ni action para mo? Te.
Ang lagay kita.
Ano ko nung nakita?
Basiyo.
May ara gimang basiyo.
Isa. Isa pa lang sa bayan na nakita. May isa silang butangan nila yung tulong. Flashlight. Aray makita sa flash. Oo. Isa pa lang kabasyo ang nakita.
Hindi pa na mabalaan sumo, hindi ko makita tatani parang balaan tabala kon anong kalibre bala. Ang galing kita natural hindi man hindi layo no kag i-secure pa nila ni ebidensya nila nga diyan
Nakita dito. Picturean. So far isa pa lang kabasyo action Ryan.
Ano?
Isa pa lang kabasyo. Hindi ko
basiyo.
siya. Oo, dilagid ng taon pati sa piya ko. So far amo pa lang gid na action Ryan ang recovery share ang amo ni ang bike lang gid amo lang gid na sa subong.
Oo, kagatong siling mo nga basi ang agsik sang dugo sa hindi man ni recoveries no, pero indikasyon na dito sa pader. Gin picturean nila how atong nakita mo nga daw dugo sa pader, ang pula.
Oo. Picturean nila. Kaya mo pa na kay na yung dulo, mabi, ginanamugid siya flashlightan. Kung hindi siya ma-flashlightan, hindi siya bala tama, ka-visible, gid action Ryan, para makitaan, gid. Ito. Isulat nila. Isa pa lang. Ari ba pa nila, cut-shock. Pati naman sa kilid, may mga santan pa, gid. Ginapang flashlight para makitaan. Okay? Bato. Hindi siya. Oo, bato lang nakakita, hindi mo makita. Sa kilid sang bike, pati ang kilid sang bike, kina-flashlightan. Kung
Ano ning ganing mga tanom na santan?
Makanuling na tanom ang sa kilid ni
Do santanan, di ba action bem, no? Action George, santan gid man. Hindi ba santana, no? Oo. Damol
sa pihak santan. Sa pihak itagid mabalaan kon santan ni siya. Hindi siya santan ilain niya tanom.
Sa piyak santan ang malapit ni nakitaan nila sang puselo, sang bala, sang ano tawag siya ni sang basiyo.
Oo. Pwede sa piyak wala. Libot kita.
Pero ining lapit ni sa pader hindi ni santan niya lain na ning tanom niya.
Oo. Pero mo ning lapit sa santan. Na. Pero ay zoom naton sa mga recoveries.
May isa pagid ka recovery?
Isa sa mga. Kay ang isa dibi
isa bala, isa basiyo.
Di lang kita malibot kita. Amo na basiyo lang kita action Brian.
Abi ko may dugang pagid.
Bike lang gid, bike kag basiyo. Wala gid na.
So possibly kay isa at igalikitik gina duha ko nung lupok eh.
Oo, pero confirm tang security guard, isa lang ko doon nabatian niya. Yan,
siya guro. O galikiti araw-araw, pangarurupod ka mo nang upod mo ya, duha, batian mo yung isa?
Kaya mali ang information ni Kagawad ng isa sa mga barangay officials there. Okay. Lapit, sir. Ara sa Brian, amo ni siya, ang lapit sa santan, ang ginatutok natin sa live, hindi nakitan ang basiyo sang wala pa niyo balaan na ano ni siyang kalibre ng pusil nga gingamit. Muna sa bonggin check naman sa sanitaryo mo sa Abusive City, gini siya gindalang hospital.
Dali lang gid bala balik kanta ka na no, ma-sustain man sa live action para. Mabuya lang ko commercial kay mabulang still. Las 8:26.
This time check is brought to you by ACS Manufacturing Corporation.
Hindi niya kapot, sir. Pinaingit na po. Oo, sir. Daddy ka. Naka-picture dad.
Ang radyo ko kapangatag premyo sa Iloilo, Aksyon Radio.
Las 8:31.
Firing line. Sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line. Sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
Balik na kita dire sa aton nga pangalagad. Balikan ta sa Aksyon para Memorano live and direct manwa dito sa Cabugao Sur, Pavia. This is a shooting incident, no, and the possible kidnapping. We have Aksyon Farah, Sinema Tineon. Ginaprocess sa gyapon sang Soko ang scene, Aksyon Farah?
Yes, wala pa sa additional nga mga recoveries sa lugar. Amo lang to kaina, isa ka basiyo, kag ang ginahimo subong is ginapangbusi-isi ang mga tanom sa kilid sang pader ni sa di nakitaan ang bisikleta, kag ginapanglantaw isa-isa, ginapang flashlightan din lang na isa-isa. Kung may mga ibang pagid ka makitaan diri sa lugar.
Kagi natong siling mo bala nga daw dugo bala? At sa tupad lang gid sa pader na ni, no? Do agsik sa pader ay ining dugo nga suro sa imo, Aksyon na Farah?
Oo.
Tupad gini siya sa bisikleta?
Hindi siya gani agsik, Aksyon Brian. Kung agsik do, kita mo siya, do kapintok-pintok lang na. Ariya, do, inabalang do may pilas ka, tapos nakasagait.
Dugin pilpilan, do nagsandig ka, abi?
Oo.
Kaya ang bagambal kaya agsik kinang pintok-pintok lagi man tuod eh.
Ariya do nagdamulit sa bala na kung butang taabi nagabisikleta ni siya, natumba siya, kung din man da ang iya nga igo, nakasandig ba siya kag palhit ang iya nga dugo sa pader.
Yeah. Ginpicturan man na sang Soko?
Oo. Ang ila subong, ang number 1 nila nga recovery scene sa crime scene, una ang basiyo, ay kaduha, gimutang nila number 2 is ang bisikleta. Gina-measure nila sa subong pagid. Ang iban pagid nga, ang mga pang-ubra, sang Soko, mga pang-ubra nila siyang Brian, plus pagid ang pag-flashlight, sige-sige, sa pihak-pihak, kay basi balagyan po nila sa mga tanom, sa mga bato-bato, nga pati may ara pagid ni iba yung mga recovery, hindi lang gid sa isa ni kabasiyo, kundi basi pa isa pa yung nagtalabog lang bala kung sa diin pagid. So, oo, amo lang gid na nakita ka na daw coins, pero hindi kita sure kung coins. Sa kahit medyo madulom.
May okay, dulom.
Oo.
Alright. Ang Soko, ara pa dira sa area, SWAT, ara mandira, ano pagid? Ang local police ang Pavia, ang investigador, do ara manda?
Oo. Ari pa. So far, wala sila sa additional nga mga information. Giti sige-sige pa ito gina-pursuit sa Pavia Police. Kundi in pagidabiti, wala may baluan. Kundi siya pakadto basta ang direksyon, nag-U-turn pabalik sa syudad. Ang bayan. Wala na baluan.
Pakadto sa direksyon sang syudad?
Mag-U-turn ka, after na ni sang gateway, balang hotel.
Oo.
Malabot ka sa aganan. pwede ni sila
Pwede man siya maka-left turn sa may Biskotso, bla, Pustos Plaza?
Oo. Pwede man, madiretso sa liko-liko na nadayon. May right kag left sa lapos sa ganan. Sa
Malabay pa da sa Maliaw?
Oo.
Pwede man siya makapasiwan na gani, pakalumpuwas to siya sa ganan?
Oo. Yung pinababalaan, biyak sa may ng paglibot ni, pag-U-turn, di pwede man kung trip kaya, ma-U-turn siya para lang maghingin biulos ng security guard, yung mga nakakita. U-turn siya, balik naman siya. O kung babalik naman dito sa Santa Barbara ka direksyon, depende. Kaya wala pa ni sa may mga nakakita. Pero ang ginahimo sa gumpang pag-police hot pursuit sa gihapon, kay ginalantaw na pilason gini siya ang biktima kay may dugo. So, lantawon kay
Dupres ka pa ko ng dugo, ahaw?
Oo. Dupres ka pa sa Action Ryan. Lantawon pa ni kung ang may dalon sa ospital. Kaya na-check naton sa sanitarium, wala sa may kindala. Asia Pacific, initial naton.
I don't think na gindala to sa ospital. Kaya bala mo kung ang plano dalon to sa ospital, ano bito? Sino bito? I mean, imagine bala, no? May tirohon, katapos ang tiron mo, dalon mo sa ospital. Dugin padakop mo ng kaugalingon mo, magamo siya na eh. Unless if it was a police operation, o galikido, ruled out naman yung police operation, nga ang gulo kay nga. Dapat kung police operation to, nag-coordinate na nasa sa Pavia Police, hindi bala? Hindi wala na kunta ni hot pursuit. O galikiti may hot pursuit eh.
Oo. Pero nga muna sumo, Ertiga, sa bayan na, pula, Ertiga, na galakyan.
Auto?
Oo.
Ang Ertiga, nung nga Suzuki?
Nissan.
Ang Ertiga, hindi Suzuki na.
Hindi ko na sure, pero ang isabi.
Kagining Ertiga niya, nga Suzuki ni, daw ano man na, daw.
Suzuki.
Do MPV bala?
MPV.
Oo.
Ang Ertiga. Ang Mirage naman niya.
Ang Mirage, ano niyang Mirage siya, do Mitsubishi ni?
Dito wala mo na.
Mitsubishi, giman ang Mirage, hindi bala? Oo. Tapos Ertiga niya, Suzuki.
Oo.
So, it's either that to, o galiki budlay, guro, hindi bala auto ko, no? Kung auto, laban Mirage, kaya ang Ertiga ni, hindi niya auto, MPV niya mo.
Galing may nagaka-confuse, Action Ryan, kasi sintang lugar, medyo madulong, kung layo ang imo yung ginadhamtangan, kung layo ka, panulok mo kung kaisa sa Ertiga, kung sa Mirage, daw auto siya. Ito medyo kang magamay siya, kung SUV, siyempre madako-dako siya, kay damo paserong kanya pasakay. Pero kung MPV, kag-auto, medyo lapit-lapit siya gawa. Pero either sa MPV, sa Ertiga, o kung Mirage, red o kung gamit-agit sa maroon ang color sang salakyan nga nakitaan diri kay ina antes ni nga nakitaan abi ang lalaki ang ginpasakay sa salakyan.
Oo, damo sang para makotanon ana na?
Ang bad stain sa kilid ni sang pader ginakuan ni sang sample sa
mutong dugo?
Oo.
Gina-swab nila?
Gina-check nila dayon part na sang nila nga ginahimo para ma-check ang crime scene sang mga taga-Soko. Personal nga mga ginahimo ni sang mga taga-Soko para makahatag ng dugang detalye sa ila nga pag-check sa crime scene para maka-report man sila sa ma-coordinate sila yon sa Pavia Police kag mahatagan man sang klaro na explanation ng investigasyon.
Ang bike kanito remove na nila Action Fara?
Oo. Lingkwa na ni kung may bike pati mabudlay maglantaw sa kilid. Diba? Bala sa pag kuwasang bike may makita pag sila additional. Pero so far, amo pa lang na bike kag ang basiyo. Wala pa ni mabalaan kung basiyo sa ano ni nga pusil.
Oh, alright. Ano pa ni no? Kadamo-damo pa sang loose ends bala pero do kakulbaan kumagamo ni no. Nga sitwasyon, imagine bala labyan kay mo tiruhon ka tapos kwaon ka lang. Pasakyon kay mo sa salakyan.
Oo.
Kakulbaan bala nga klase panahon naton subong sini.
Ang sa pagkabalo nato na amo ning area isa ni sa mga ginapang ang amo ning lugar diri Action Ryan sa tapos ang Vice ang lugar sa diin isa na tabo is masami na digani ginabasanbayan sa mga kapulisan. Balik iti siya temprano pa kay amo ning area before may mga report man adi nga mga nagda-drug race amo ning ginatambayan gid sa pulis. Pero kay ina si wala siyempre sa pulis pati nagalibot man sila, muna na tsimpuhan, natabo ni ang shooting incident sa tabok lang isang Vital Ridge, diri sa Kabugaw sa Pavia.
Kag isa pa, may, ang punto, bala mayor nga karsada mo?
Oo.
Highway niya mo?
Oo.
Actually,
Ayun,
ulunhan na din, bala, Vital Ridge, no? Urunhan sa Vital Ridge na ang gateway nga hotel.
Oo.
Urunhan na sa hotel nga nada, ang bangga na nada, bala nga laposto, bala sa may, ang ano ni, biskotso, bala? Bangga, laposto sa may, sa plaza, sa Pavia. Ti prestation na natusunan? Hindi, bala?
Oo, amo ni nga lugar, mga pag-report, kung medyo madamo, gimay natin sa mga tao. O galing titikainan, na tsimpuhan, gagin tsimpuhan, gid siguro, Action Ryan, nga wala sa madamo nga tao, wala sa madamo sa lakyan, kaginimo ang pagpantiro.
Gin panilagan gina siguro da?
Oo. Amo nang isa sa mga initial na mga nagkakuha sa investigasyon, lantawon ta kon magsibo sa ginhimo sa bungtang kapulisan, pero laban-laban daw ginbantayan gid kado ang amo
dapat ni subong sa amo ni nga mga klase sang krimen bla, dapat tanan ni nga mga police station ni tani sa mga kaiping nga mga lugar dapat naka-high alert man ni kun tani mo. Based on the description to bala sang ginsakyan, most likely Mitsubishi Mirage. Na pula ko, no?
Ang lugar lang man na nga lapit-lapit sa sabay ko nagdiretso ta sa Iloilo City. Kung magkadto ka nga pa-right o kung iban pag yun nga mga lugar ti basi maglusot siya ko San Miguel kay diretso sa Aganan Action Bayan malusot sabi pa kato San Miguel nga direksyon o kung nagbalik siya sa Santa Barbara o kung sa Pavia pag yun lusot-lusot na lang na mo may alagyan sa Pavia magkadto sabi sa Plaza San Pavia may lulutan pa kadto sa Takas. Wala mga balaan ko nagbibiritso pag sa Paliganes o kung iban pag Zaragay iban yung mga lugar wala pa rin nahibaluan kay sa ilahat pursuit operation wala mahibaluan kundi nang ginagyan sa salakyan na din nakita kailan yung sasakyan sang isa sang lalaki nga nagabisikleta so bay ni tanan wala pa ni nahibaluan kung wala pa na plastar kay ginawlat naton ang latest police investigation sa natabo diri nga shooting incident sa Kabugaw sa Pavia.
Wait, tagay kabalo kung din makadto eh.
Oo.
Ang biktima? Or kung din man siya halin?
Oo. Ang pagbisikleta, kaina mo lagi na iyan nagbisikleta. Kaya kung makadto di sa Santa Barbara nga direksyon, basi ang balay niya dito o kung nag-bike-bike lang kasi hapon namigin na mag-bike-bike wala pa may baluan na sumayin ko.
Galing kiti di. Amo ni ano na oras to eh. Mga pasado na Gurula City, media to ay.
Oo. Depende na karon. Ataw na karon na kaya nakilangot pa kita sa mga ibang pagin nga mga otoridad para mabalaan natin masibo bala ang mga informasyon nga natiko natin diri subong kag sa ibang pagin nga posible natin mapangayuan sa
Alright. Action Farah, tagan ka namon ligwa ano para maka ipaplastar ka na bala no makakuha kita sinidugang ang follow up. Salamat gid Action Farah.
Para may murano sa Iloilo, Action Radio.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
Sa kabudlay, siniban mga klase sang sitwasyon. Muni ka delikadong panahon ta subong aksyon, Bem, no? Imagine this is a major thoroughfare, no? This is a major road, a highway. Urunhan ni Banwa sang Vital Ridge na kung pabalik ka pakadto ka dito sa direksyon sa Ngaganan. Tisurunhan niya ng Gateway Hotel, urunhan sang hotel na Banwa. Dami na ng Bangga, Biscocho House, diretsoon mo na to, plaza na mo. Hindi, bala, mayor niya Banwa sini nga karsada, and then something like this happens. Hindi pa niya gani, ano parang turas kay ina Banwa man, butang na ton. Sino dito mga dira-dira, Guru Action George La City Media, eh. Why gani Guru La City Media ang tabo to? It was relatively early, kagina siyang natabo ni Banwa. May gintiro, santo sa mga sirkumstansya, may dugo, no? May basiyo. Well, ang indikasyon na sa aton, sila barang nga naigo gitong biktima, ginpilit pa ba no sakay sa salakyan nga ginasakyan man sa nagtiro siya? So just imagine, no? The time, no? We're living in subong nga may matabo ba no sang kaparyosin eh. Gabay ka lang ya tiruhon ka. Wala pa ang iba na drive-by lang na mo, palukpan ka, tiruhon ka, bayaan ka na ya mo. Inibla, no? Ariya ba no, lain pagid? Gintiro na pilit mga ginsakay.
Firing line, sandala ng mga naapi. Firing line, sa panig ng katotohanan. Firing line.
Which makes this case extremely peculiar. Ang iba, ba mo ini mga suspect? Yaban mo, pagtapos na niligo si mo, biyaan ka na niya? Prioridad nila nga makapalagyo mo. Ariaway, pagtapos sila tiro ya ba? No? Imagine, matiyog pa to sila action bem, dala sa salakyan tong biktima. Purti kay isog. Anyway, bantin nyo ba, no? Sini madugang, sini may informasyon with Action George Ticao Cabrera. Lang alang oras ta eh. Dili sa studio po Action Bema Bintino, sa transmitter Action Wilman Balundon. Inyo alagad, Action Brian Valle. Sa Iloilo, Action Radio.
Comments, suggestions, or objections to the preceding program may be referred to the Commissioner.